Okay, so Assalamualaikum everyone. Hello and welcome to the final session in our Insider's Guide to University Application series. We've had two sessions already, one this past Sunday, one this past Wednesday. The first one focused on university applications in UAE and Pakistan, and the second one focused on university applications in multiple countries like Canada, Australia, US, UK, Germany, Turkey, etc. And we've got with us, in total, we've had about like 20 speakers, and they're based in 6 countries. And it's been absolutely amazing organizing it. The team has been phenomenal. So thank you all for staying with us, to our speakers and to our attendees, some of you who've been attending all of our sessions. We're super grateful. So today, we are going to wrap up the series. First, let's do a quick icebreaker. So if we go to the second slide, we have a brief icebreaker activity for the students who have joined us today. Some of you have joined us in previous sessions, so just feel free to reintroduce yourself in the chat box. And also tell us what you're looking forward to in this workshop, which sections, any questions you're looking to get answered. So happy to see so many familiar names here. So Maya, it's been a while. It's fun to see you in person at our workshops in December. And yes, it's wonderful to see all these people. Some of you have been joining us since Winter Academy, and we're so grateful. We hope you really enjoy our sessions. So to introduce yourself, we'll have our speakers introduce themselves in a little bit as well. Let's go to the next slide. Let's do that. And okay, so what are we discussing in today's session? So today's session, we're diving into some specific majors in different countries. Our speakers are going to talk about whatever they know about these majors and where to apply for them. So we've got law, engineering, architecture, dentistry, and briefly, because we had a technical issue and we weren't able to cover Canada in depth last week, although Omar did a fantastic job, Adil is going to continue his bit as well. And finally, I'm really looking forward to this panel discussion. All of our speakers are going to jump in and then get into the nitty gritty of their experience and the applications process. So I'm really excited. All right, so the next slide, please. A quick introduction for our speakers. How about we ask each of you to unmute for like 30 seconds and just 10 seconds, in fact, and just introduce yourself really quickly.
Okay. Yeah. Hi guys, I'm an LLB Honors Law graduate from Middlesex University, and I'm currently working for Galadari Advocates and Legal Consultants, and I'm in the process of sitting for licensing exams. And I'm really happy to join this session today.
Asfa?
Hello guys, I'm a third year BLB student at LAMS. Really looking forward to the session.
Aslan?
Hello, everyone. I'm a second year computer engineering student at the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany, and it's nice to meet you all.
Hello, assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Zoha, and I am a graduate from the College of Dental Medicine and University of Sharjah. I'm a dentist, and I'm currently studying for my licensing exams for the UAE. And I'm very excited for today's session.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'm from the UK. I'm Ali, and I'm a second year at Luton Sixth Form College.
Hello everyone, this is Zainab. I'm a recent graduate from Osman University in architectural engineering, and right now I'm working in an engineering consultancy firm here in the UAE.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Shaista. I did my MBBS degree from Rasi Khaimah Medical and Health Science University, and currently I am pursuing my specialization in pediatrics in Jalila Children's Hospital, Dubai.
We don't have Omar with us on this call, but he's a CE graduate from University of Sharjah. I think it's something to do with computer engineering, and electrical engineering as well. And he wasn't able to join us, but I'll be briefly reading out during his section what he has to say about his applications process. And finally, we have Adil.
Hello, everyone. I'm a second year student here at LUMS doing a BSc Honors in Economics.
Awesome. All right, so just to kind of orient you as to how we're approaching this, we definitely don't want it to be a typical career or university fair where we just tell you, these are the universities, here's a checklist of what you used to apply. I mean, we want to cover that information for you, but we want to give you a complete story because let's be real, if you're Pakistani, like your background does affect your choices, does affect your vision as well for your future. So we kind of want to present stories from our speakers. We want them to share what led them to choose a particular major, university to apply to, scholarships, financial aid, how did they figure out some tough questions in their journey. So we want them to share their story with you as they present. And during the panel talk, we'll dive into their stories even further. So really quickly, we're going to start off with some key vocabulary just so that you're equipped to understand some of the language our speakers are going to be using on this session. So I'll kick us off by explaining prerequisites. So prerequisites, pre means before and requisites means required. So the word prerequisites basically means anything that is required for you to actually apply to a university. So for example, for you to have your high school diploma, that's a prerequisite for going into university. Anti-requisites, Adil, get away.
Okay, so anti-requisites are obviously the exact opposite. This is a term that you will often see in course outlines and in course descriptions or degree descriptions, where they will have two courses that will be serving similar purposes, and as a result, you cannot take both of those courses. You can either take one course or the other. So that's what an anti-requisite is. It's two courses that basically teach you the same thing, and they satisfy the same requirements. But you're not allowed to take both. You're only allowed to take one of the two.
All right, I'm having some background noise situations. I'm going to hand over entrance exams to any volunteer, any speaker who wants to volunteer to explain it. Raise your hand if you want to. I see Zoha reaching for it. Yes, Zoha, go for it.
Okay, so entrance examinations, some universities require you to have, they have exams specific to the universities themselves. For instance, I believe in medicine, they have MCATs in Pakistan, for example. So those will be, those qualify for what entrance examinations are. So specific exams that you need to give to be applying to certain universities or certain specific courses. I believe I hope I got that right, yeah?
You got that very right. Scholarships versus financial aid. Just to briefly overview this, scholarships is something like an aid, like an award that you get for some kind of accomplishment. It could be merit-based, or it could be based on athletics, or it could be based on some community work that you did. So it's basically given to you based on an achievement. Financial aid is basically assistance that's given to you based on your need, based on your financial situation. So in the US, for example, there is a financial aid application process. There's a difference there. However, that being said, there are some universities where if you get in, it's based on your achievements because they're very competitive. And the financial aid is not, if you're getting it, doesn't mean you're getting it because you're poor or something. You're getting it because you've already gotten in. So they want to meet whatever gap you have to be actually able to afford that institution. So financial aid is not a dirty word. That's basically what I wanted to emphasize. Quickly, tuition fees and other fees. Now, I think we all know, because you pay school tuition as well, you know that it means the school fees that you're basically paying to actually get the teaching and the instruction and the knowledge and learning. But there are other fees as well when you're in a university. There could be fees for lab fees, extracurriculars. Let's not forget housing. Housing can often be just as expensive as your actual tuition. There can be other types of fees, as administration fees, books. Books can be a major expense. So when you're applying to universities and you're checking out their costs, do take a holistic view of the costs and don't just focus on the tuition fees. Credit hours, Adil, over to you again.
Okay, so credit hours are basically attached to each course that you take at university, right? So whenever you take a course at university, it will have a certain number of credit hours attached to it. It's usually 3 or 4, sometimes it's even 2. So what happens is that as you go through university, you'll keep on accumulating these credit hours, and you'll be allowed to graduate once you hit a certain number of credit hours. So for my degree, that number is 130 credit hours, and I'm getting 3 to 4 credit hours per course, right? So this is, and also with credit hours, they also link to the amount of effort that you'll have to put in for that course. So a course that has 2 credit hours is not going to be as work intensive, as tough, as difficult as a course that has 4 credit hours. And the definition of how much work is credited to each credit hour changes university to university, so you can look that up as per your interest. But the general guideline is that the number of credit hours a course has is linked to the number of hours outside of your class hours that you'll have to give to that course per week.
visas and I-20, I'll just go over it very quickly, although Adil could very well just be an admissions counselor at this point. But visas and I-20, basically, like when you're applying to go to a different country, we all know what visas are, but there may be specific terms for forms that you need in order to apply for the visa. So I put in the one that I knew of, I-20 for the US. I'm sure there's an equivalent in the UK and Australia. We briefly covered all that in the previous session. So if you missed it, we will be putting up the recording of that session, and then you can just watch those sections that are relevant to your interests. Finally, common application versus UCAS. Again, just to make you aware that in some countries, there is a name for the application process. So the common application in the US is like one application, as the name suggests, that's common to multiple universities. You can use that to apply to many universities at once. UCAS is something similar in the UK. There are some other ones in Germany I've heard of that I'm forgetting right now, but just watch out for those terms. They're just names of application processes. And many countries, actually, you apply individually to each university. Semester, it's like term. I think semester is the American word, and I think, and term is a British word. Some people also use modules in their courses. They refer to modules or course instead of a semester or term. It's basically duration of a program. And the reason why it matters is because when you're paying for universities, so sometimes the fees might be by semester. Also, if you're looking at graduation requirements, they may state it by semester instead of years. So you could actually be spending more years or less years than what you anticipate, because if you're depending on your ability to complete the semesters. Adil has his hand up. Go for it, Adil.
Yeah, we actually had a question in the chat from Maha asking, what does it mean by 3 credit hours? I think she thinks it might be unclear. So basically, credit hours are the number of points. Let's just put it that way. It's like you're getting points for each course that you take. So if a course has 3 credit hours, that means 3 credit hours will be put into your account for that semester, right? And your university will have a certain requirement. So if you want to graduate, you will need to have a certain number of credit hours in order to achieve it. So if you are in my place and you are doing BSc economics from LUMS, then that requirement is 130 credit hours. So over the course of my 4 years at LUMS, I have to take at least 130 credit hours in order to graduate after that time period is over. So hope that helps.
Perfect. That was super helpful. Okay, now we're going to dive into a presentation by major. We're going to start off with law, and Aksa is going to take it away.
Hi guys, let's move to the first slide for law. Yeah, so before we dive into the different types of law degrees available and how you qualify to become a licensed practicing lawyer, you need to understand that just like medicine, the law degree is specific to the country you acquired in. And then the licensing requirements are also specific to the jurisdiction that you wish to practice in. So now, for example, the 3 most common law degrees, the main 3, I wouldn't use the word common because common law in itself is a type of law, but the 3 main law degrees that you can take up are the 3-year long UK LLB, or a 3-year JD program, Juris Doctor program in the US, which is only followed after you acquire a 4-year undergrad bachelor's degree in the US or anywhere else for that matter, and then you go on to law school. Now, there's also something called as a 5-year law degree program in India and Pakistan. Now, what's common between all 3 degrees is the fact that they use the common law. They teach the common law in those law degrees, because there are 3 different types of laws in the world. You have the common law, the civil law, and the religious law. Now, the Arab world follows a different type of law, which is a combination of civil and religious law. However, India and Pakistan, because as we know, they're colonized by the British, they follow the common law, which is why the type of legal practice that takes place in India and Pakistan is very similar to the one in the UK and US. Therefore, the degrees are similar as well. However, the number of years may differ. Now, in order to get a law degree in the UK, what you do is you can go to law school right after finishing your A-levels or grade 12 or high school. So you do a 3-year UK law LLB degree program, and that's your educational part of it. And once you're done with a 3-year long LLB degree, you are a law graduate. However, when we move to the next slide, you'll see that that's not the case in the US, and it's far more time consuming. Now, what I put down after your 3-year long LLB degree is the fact that how do you qualify to become a practicing lawyer? Because just like how doctors require licensing in order to practice, you can't just practice law by just having a degree in place. You need to have certain licensing in place in order to be a licensed lawyer. Now, after a 3-year long UK LLB degree, there are 2 different ways of qualifying as a UK solicitor or a barrister. So what you do is you do a LPC program, which is a legal practitionering course. And then you secure a 2-year long training contract at one of the law firms. And that is how you become a licensed solicitor after 1 year of LPC course and 2-year of 2-year training contract. Now, but you don't have to worry. You may not have a ULB degree, but you still want to change your mind and become a practicing lawyer. Can you still do that? Yes, you can. If you have a non-law degree, you can still pursue a career in law. How do you do that? You can pursue a year-long GDL course, and then you do the same thing after. So you do the LPC after, and then the 2-year-long training contract. A lot of people opt for that option because, to be honest, at the age of 18, we don't really know what we want to do with our lives. And it's okay if you don't, because it's okay to figure it out. That's one thing that I personally learned as well, that it's okay to not have everything figured out. You can make ways for yourself later down the line as well. Of course, it's amazing if you do know beforehand exactly what you want to do, but your likes and dislikes and your preferences change along the way, which is something that happened for me. I went to med school after A-levels and then made my way into law. And then I did my 3-year UK LLB degree after doing 1 year of med school. Now, the process of qualifying as a solicitor is, however, changing in the UK, and they're moving towards a more consolidated way of qualifying as a lawyer. So the licensing feature is changing, and they're moving more towards a unified set of examinations. So you can sit for the SQE, Solicitors Qualifying Examination Part 1 and 2, and have 2 years of qualifying work experience in order to qualify as a solicitor in the UK. Because securing a training contract at a UK law firm is extremely competitive, and a lot of people are not able to get licensed by following in that pathway because of those complications that do come out of that pathway. So also there's another way, so there are 2 ways. I believe one of our other speakers talks more about the different types of qualifications afterwards as well. So now we'll just move on to acquiring a UK law degree, which is on our next slide. Yeah, so how do you get a US law degree, sorry. So what you do is you first pursue a 4-year long pre-law degree or any 4 years bachelor's degree. So you need to have this is like how Bushra mentioned about prerequisites. So this is a prerequisite into getting into law school in the US. You have to have a prior degree before getting into law school. Now, how do you get into law school after doing your 4-year pre-law degree or bachelor's degree? Can you just get into law school without sitting for any entrance examinations? No, you can't. You have to sit for an LSAT in order to get admission into a law school in the US. And the degree in the US is known as a Juris Doctor JD degree, which is 3 years long. So the whole process of finishing a degree and being a law graduate is about 7 years long in the US, as opposed to being 3 years long in the UK, because you can go to law school right after your high school is done or your A-levels is completed, and you can move on to your law degree program, which is not the case in the US, because similarly, how in the US, you first do pre-med, and then you do your MCAT, and then you make your way to the med school. It's very similar in the US with law as well. And now, how do you get licensed to practice law in the US? You sit for the state bar exam and become a licensed attorney to practice law. We'll move on to the next slide. Yeah. Now, because we were talking about acquiring common law degrees, another type of common law degree is offered in Pakistan, which is a 5-year law degree program. However, there are also certain universities available in Pakistan that offer a 3-year UK LLB program locally in Pakistan at international university centers, which is very similar to the UK LLB that you would get in the UK. And then you can follow the same way of getting licensed as you would if you would have a UK LLB degree from the UK itself. But if you want to get admitted as an advocate in Pakistan, so after completing your degree, in order to get licensed as an advocate in Pakistan, you sit for certain licensing exams, such as the Law GAT, take up a 6-month apprenticeship in the High Court, with the High Court, not in the High Court, sorry, with a High Court lawyer, and it's followed by an in-person interview, and that therefore you are then admitted to the lower court in Pakistan, and you are licensed as an advocate. Moving forward. Yes, now let's talk about law in the UAE. Before I went into law in the UAE, I would always hear about, oh, you can't really practice law in the UAE, you're an expat. So that's one of the myths in here that we keep hearing about, that expats can't study nor practice law in the UAE. Fact, you can. Myth, you need to know how to speak Arabic to be able to practice law in the UAE. Partially true, but let me explain further. Let's move on. So there are quite a few law universities available here in the UAE, such as Middlesex University that you've been hearing me talk all about. You have the Al Ghurair University, University of Dubai, University of Sharjah, American University in the Emirates, United Arab Emirates University, Sorbonne University, Abu Dhabi, and Amity University. Now, what's different in all of these is the fact that majority of them offer civil law degrees, and it's conducted in Arabic, which is not of any relevance to any of us here, because we're looking to have a common law degree so we can practice law at an international level. Amity University, however, offers a 5-year law program, an Indian law program. But like I mentioned, India also practices common law, therefore it's very similar to the UK common law degree. But the one that is of most relevance to us is Middlesex University, given the fact that it's the only university in the UAE that offers a UK common law degree program and LLB honors law degree. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, so there are lots of universities that, like I was mentioning, that offer a law degree across the UAE. Most, however, offer a law degree in Arabic. Since there are different types of law degrees specific to a jurisdiction, as an expat, you want to get an English UK LLB in order to be able to practice internationally. Therefore, your best bet in the UAE for a law degree is Middlesex University Dubai, which offers a UK LLB. Moving forward. Yes. So yes, you can practice law in the UAE as an expat, and no, you do not need to know Arabic. However, Arabic is still very crucial to the region when it comes to law practice. But you need to keep in mind that since Dubai and Abu Dhabi have become and are striving to become more and more international when it comes to their standard of practice, there are tons of international law firms out here, including all the top UK and US law firms. The DIFC courts, additionally, the DIFC courts and the ADGM courts, the DIFC courts in Dubai and the ADGM courts in Abu Dhabi are independent jurisdictions that practice common law, the UK and US legal systems, completely different from the UAE federal court system and the Dubai's local court system. Therefore, this allows an expat to practice international law in the UAE. Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, and then in order to practice as an expat lawyer after gaining either a UK or US law degree, you still need to get licensed first in your relevant jurisdiction, after which you get the license to practice in the UAE. So like how we mentioned earlier, that there's certain licensing examinations and pathways that you need to follow in order to qualify either as a solicitor or a barrister in the UK, or in a US attorney or advocate in Pakistan. I would like to talk a little bit more about how you can practice law here in the UAE. So after you have your UK LLB law degree, whether you work at a local law firm or an international law firm in the UAE, Arabic is not a drawback. So a lot of times people here choose not to opt for law as a profession because they're worried, like people like us who've grown up here, because they're worried that they may not be able to pursue a career here, given the fact that Arabic is quite important to the legal profession in the UAE. However, the law firms are structured in such a way, I think if you move to the next slide, I put down points about that. No, okay, let's just go back 2 more slides. Yeah, one more. If you go back to slide 16, please. Yes, so the law firms are structured in a way. Oh yes, we missed a slide, which is the international law firms, the DIFC courts and the AGM courts practice law in the English language. However, the federal court system still functions with Arabic. But now you need to keep in mind is that if any criminal matter is still dealt with in the federal court system, therefore it's completely in Arabic. However, certain matters can be taken to the DIFC or the ADGM courts by putting them down in contracts. I'm giving you a little more information, but it's important for you to understand. This information is important in order for you to understand that it is possible for you to practice law in the UAE. Now, the fact that federal court systems still function in Arabic isn't a huge issue though, because the UAE jurisdiction has a unique legal framework with 3 different jurisdictions within itself, and is multilingual. So the law firms, whether local or international, are structured in a way to complement both Arabic and English, have in-house legal translators who are working around the clock to make sure that the documents, whether a non-Arabic speaker lawyer is going to be looking at them or an Arabic speaker is going to be looking at them, are translated accordingly. And since the DIFC code and ADGM code function in English, all the documents that are used for those codes are in English, and the ones that are used in the local courts are in Arabic. So I hope that helps and convinces you that you can pursue a law career in the UAE, and Arabic is not a drawback, and you being an expat is not going to hold you back from having a law career in the UAE, because I used to get those questions and I had those reservations as well. But now that I'm working at a local law firm, I know that not knowing Arabic is definitely not a drawback, and you can definitely pursue a career in law in the UAE. So I hope that helps, and we'll talk more about it later on in the question session. And over to the next speaker.
Wow, that was amazing, Aksa. I've heard Aksa talk about her law journey so many times, and I was like, I want to capture that somehow someday in a presentation, and she just did that so brilliantly. Thank you so much. Aksa was also the head of special projects at the PYF team. So yes, handing that over to Asfa now to talk about law in Pakistan.
Assalamualaikum guys. I think I'm audible enough. If not, you guys can just stop me and just let me know. Okay, thank you for that, Bushra. Okay, so I'll be talking more about law in Pakistan, and I'll be building upon some of the things that Aksa has already mentioned. So first of all, as Aksa mentioned about the myths in UAE, I'll just mention some of the myths that are regarding law in Pakistan. And I also had to face that. So basically, I took a decision of doing law in my A-levels. I just took law as a subject in my A-levels. I did not know that I was going to pursue law as a degree as well. Okay? So till that time, I wasn't sure that this is something that I'm going to be doing for my next, for the whole year, in fact, for my whole life, in fact. So yeah. So basically, one of the basic myths that happens in Pakistan and that all of us have to face is that law is not something which is for females, because it's a very male dominant field and like that, right? So basically, when I took the decision of doing law, the first response of my family was that no one in our family is lawyer. Then where did this thought even came in your mind, right? And then they were like, I was like, no, I'm very sure that I want to be a lawyer and I want to go in the corporate law. And then they were like, okay, fine, you have taken a decision, but let's just have some experience, and why don't you do an internship in a law firm and see if you like the atmosphere and the environment, and you can work there. And I was like, okay, fine. And then I went for an internship during my after my first year of A-levels, and during that summer break I went for an internship in a corporate law firm, and I was like, yes, this is for sure something that I want to do, because I just loved it. So it was the time after my A-levels, first year of A-levels, that was the time when I took the decision that I am definitely going to do law. So the next question that came in front of me was that either I have to do a 3 years degree, which Aksa has also mentioned that there are 2 paths in Pakistan which you can pursue for the law degree. One is a 3-year program and the other is a 5-year program. I'll just get into the nitty-gritties of both of these. Okay. So 3 years program means that you're gonna do a LLB degree, right? And this degree is basically offered. For example, you might have heard about UCL, University College Lahore. So basically, that university is affiliated with University of London, right? And they give the external degree. So basically, you study in University College Lahore for 3 years and you complete your LLB here, but you get a degree of University of London, right? So basically, this is what a 3 years program is. 5 years program is basically BA LLB program, in which you have to do 2 years of BA and then you have to do 3 years of LLB. So, and basically, for example, I'm doing BA LLB program from LUMS. So this is a degree that LUMS is offering. It's not an external degree. It's the degree that LUMS is offering me, basically, right? So why are there 2 different paths? I'll just explain that as well. So basically, adding BA with LLB is a requirement of HEC. HEC is basically Higher Education Commission of Pakistan. So basically, like they have said that medicine is going to be of 5 years in Pakistan. They have just said that in order to practice law in Pakistan, you need to have a BA degree, right? So basically, in a 5 years program, it's basically a complete program. You do that program and then you just start practicing law. As in contrast to the 3 years program, after this, as mentioned by Aksa as well, you would have to do a 6 months program, and after that, you can basically start practicing law in Pakistan. So basically in 3 years program, it's basically you just study about the UK law. Okay? It's basically common law, English law, whatever you can say. But 5 years program is basically, for example, the one I'm doing in NUMS. It's basically the mixture of UK and Pakistani law. It's basically it's complete. It's basically a complete package of what the law in Pakistan is, because obviously Pakistani law is very familiar to UK law, but again, there are some religious things involved in it, and there are some differences. So all those are covered in a 5-year degree. Can you move to the next slide? Okay, so this was all about 3 years and 5-year degree differences. Just talking about the admission requirement. So basically, there is no other admission requirement in any of the universities in Pakistan. Like either you go for a 3-year program or you go for a 5-year program. You can go there after your A levels or your FSC or any equivalent degree. There is just one requirement which is set not by the universities, it is set by the HEC, again, Higher Education Commission, and that is LAT, which is Law Admission Test. So basically, this test is conducted by HEC, and you just have to clear this test. It's a very basic general knowledge type test. I just gave it without even like practicing for it, because it in my year, like 3 years ago, it was the first time that it was offered and it was made compulsory. So you just have to take above 50% of the marks, and you are eligible to take admission in any of the universities that you want to apply. So the admission requirements are particularly going to be based on the specific universities that you're gonna that you're gonna apply, but there's no like general requirement for in order to get into a law degree, you need to have these sets. It's not like that. It's just one simple test, which is law admission test. I hope it clarifies a lot of concept about what law in Pakistan is. And in case you guys have any more questions, I'm looking forward to hearing them after this law degree session. Over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ali, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'll be talking about studying law in the UK. Aksa has already gone over, like, broadly.
All right. I think we're ready to hand over to Ali to talk about applying for law degrees in the UK. Yes.
Could you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes, we could. Ali, we could. You can continue, please.
So as I was saying, Aksa has already broadly gone over what studying law in the UK is like. So I'm just going to go into a bit more depth. So why would you want to study law? For me personally, I study law because I enjoy arguing, or I enjoy debating, and it's just generally a really fun, course to do. It's also a very highly useful degree, or highly useful study law. You never know, you might need it one day. It's highly valued as well. It opens the door to many high-paid career paths. So if you take law in university and you decide, maybe you don't want to be a lawyer, you can still go on to business and other career areas. And it's also amazing for developing skills such as analyzing, writing, debating, etc. However, studying law is very stressful and very hard. There's a lot of content, and if you are not, on top of it, you're going to struggle. And it's very competitive. As Aksa said, there are a lot of people studying law and not enough, jobs as lawyers. So you're going to have to put in the effort to kind of stand out from the rest. Can we move on? Thanks. All right. So one common conception about lawyers is that, a lawyer can both act in court and be a desk job. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is true in a lot of areas. In the UK, it is not. So in the UK, we have two types of lawyers, a solicitor and a barrister. And a solicitor is kind of a desk lawyer, deals with contracts, advises clients, etc., etc. Most of a solicitor is most of the work of a solicitor is going to be at his desk. And a solicitor is usually employed by a law firm. And a barrister is, when you think of a lawyer, you're going to imagine someone in court arguing. That's what a barrister is. A barrister represents clients in courts, works with a solicitor to, get details about the case. They can also offer legal advice, but they are not specialized in legal advice, and usually they are self-employed. Can we move on? And there are a bunch of different areas of a bunch of different areas of law, one of them being criminal law, which is pretty straightforward. Thing about criminal law in the UK is it's long hours, there's not much pay, so it's not really an attractive option here. There's commercial law, which mainly deals with transactions, contracts, any, business to business. Corporate law deals with intra-business affairs, so mergers, litigation, and such. And family law is essentially anything to do with separation, divorce, prenups, wills, emancipation, anything family. There's a lot more areas of law though, such as immigration, human rights, and you can decide what kind of lawyer you want to be towards the end of your university course. Can we move on? And this is the main path to take if you want to become a lawyer. There are two paths, this one and an apprenticeship, but I will talk about the apprenticeship more during the panel discussion. So the main way to become a lawyer in the UK is obviously first do your law degree. That takes about 3 years generally. And then after that, you have to do your first SQE exam, which is fairly new. So you might have to do SQE or you might have to do the other exam. I think it's LPC, I'm not sure. And then after your SQE, you do a 2-year training contract with any law firm. And as Aksa said, it is very, very competitive. A lot of people don't actually get a training contract. So like I said, if you want to study law and become a lawyer, you have to put in a lot of work. And then after your 2-year training contract, which is it's basically work experience. After your training contract, you do your second set of SQE exams. And once you're done with those, you're a lawyer, you're a solicitor, or a barrister. I think barristers have to take different exams, but it's generally the same path. Can we move on? Is there anything left? And just talk a bit about how a law course in university works. So as usual, there's 3 years. The first and second year have mandatory modules. So for example, I think University of Birmingham, in the first year, you have to do contract law, you have to do criminal law and such. And then second year is commercial law. And then during the third year, you have 1 or 2 compulsory modules. So I think for University of Birmingham, it is wills and estates. And then you do get the option of doing whatever module you feel like. So if you want to become a human rights lawyer, you can do human rights law. If you want to become an immigration lawyer, you can do immigration law, family law. As such, you have 5 options, 5 extra modules to add on. And the first and second years generally tend to be 50-50 with coursework and examinations. But during your third year, you do get a bit of break. You do less exams, but you have to do more coursework. I think it's 75-25% split. And that's basically about it. I tried keeping this very brief.
Thanks. Well, you can really tell that we have aspiring lawyers presenting because the presentations are crisp and concise and like well structured. So that's great. These people know how to present an argument, present a case. But so we have some questions in the chat. We had a question about what subjects you need, and I think Aksa addressed it. Ali and Aswa, if you have a different take on that, do let me know.
Okay, so I would just like to answer it in case of Pakistan. So in order to continue your law degree in Pakistan, there's no specific subject that you are required to do. So you can have any subjects in your A levels or your FSC or your any equivalent degree, and you just get into the law degree. That's it.
It's kind of the same thing in the UK. If you want to take law, generally universities have subjects for A levels. So if you take, for example, psychology, history, law, those are preferred subjects. But there are some subjects that are completely irrelevant that they won't really like. So if you do arts, for example, they're not going to really look at that as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay, so there's some subjects that help more than others, and it's the science subjects basically, and maybe some. Are there any social sciences, humanities subjects that could help? Philosophy,
Yes,
history
any sociology, philosophy, psychology, anything that's essay based, they will like.
based. All right. Let's see, there any more questions? Civics. So civics help, Maha is asking. Or are you asking about civic law? I don't know, Maha. If you want, you can unmute. I can, or you can just, do you want me to unmute you? Oh, would having civics as a subject in your high school help you with getting a law degree or getting into law school?
I mean, it varies from uni to uni. Just check different universities' websites, and they should have a list of preferred subjects.
Great. Are there any further questions? So here, I have a couple of questions, just listening to your presentations. So the path that you described, the 6 years, and it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of similar in different contexts. After you do those 6 years, you need to go to graduate school again, or is it like within 6 years now you can get your license, you can practice?
Yeah, as soon as you're done with your exams and everything, you can practice, but you can also go back for postgraduate studies.
And what is the purpose of postgraduate studies at that point, if you're aware?
If you want to get like a master's or a doctorate, whatever you want to do, I think it just helps with employability and such, and generally just better pay.
All right. Okay.
Shall I go on as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so basically what this concept is like, after your 5 years degree, like if you complete like BA LLB or 3 years degree and like a program of 6 months that you have to do in order to practice law. So now you're a lawyer, take care. Like after these like years, you are a lawyer, but in order to specialize, you can go for masters, and in masters you can specify your basically your field. Like for example, you want to be a certain lawyer, so that going to be specified in your like postgraduate studies. But before that, you're going to be a simple lawyer, and you can practice it.
Okay. So here's another question that's a bit out of the way from what you guys are talking about, but it's still quite relevant. So is it possible for people mid-career to take on like becoming a lawyer, or is it something that you should do? I've heard many people tell me once they've gotten the engineering degrees or they're already started their career 5 years into it, now that you're in law school, do you see that? Do you see people who are older switching over to law and trying to start on the same path as you?
I mean, yeah, generally you can start law at any age, no matter if you're 18 or 20, 30. As long as you're willing to put in the dedication and work, you can start law whenever you want.
I'm definitely applying this year then.
Yeah, same is the case in Pakistan. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of like famous actresses, but I'm just gonna name Marwa Hussain. She just completed her 3 years law degree recently. Like I guess last year she completed it. So it's like you can just do your 3 years degree whenever you want to, because it's just like it's basically an external degree which you can anytime take up. But in case of doing a BA LLB program, and for example, if you're applying for certain universities, so talking about LUMS, that's not the case with LUMS, because LUMS has some like certain age brackets. So if you fall in that only, then you can apply into LUMS basically. But you can always go for a 3-year degree program.
Okay, that's it. Just like Kim Kardashian, basically, right? She also did that. So yeah, we should channel the greats. I had another question in my mind, but it's kind of, oh yes. So becoming a lawyer is the obvious thing when you study law, but are there any alternative career paths that people don't think about that you could pursue with a law degree?
I mean, generally any career path you can think of. You can go into business, you can go into accounting, anything like that. Because no matter what career path you think of, law is a very useful degree for getting into that career.
I think he's quite right, because during my ACCA as well, I think I mentioned it, we study law in quite a lot of detail, corporate law.
That's what I'm thinking. Also thinking legal advisors at big corporates and how much money they make. And it's a lucrative career as well. So that's great. All right. So I know other speakers are like, okay, when did we get our chance? So let's jump into that. Thank you guys again, Aksa, Aswa, Ali, amazing job with the law chapter of this presentation. So now we're on to engineering. Okay. Omar, since Omar's not here, I'm going to let Arsalan take it away and then I'll kind of share what Omar did. Arsalan, take it away.
Hello guys. That's the third slide, sorry. So, hello everyone. My name is Arslan. I think I gave my introduction right at the beginning. And before we get into specifically engineering in Germany, let's go over just engineering. Now, I mean, a lot of students nowadays are still thinking about doing engineering, even though all of us know that engineering is like a cliche at this point. You know, like either you go for medicine or you go for engineering. So you think that there are a lot of students that are already going into engineering. Maybe should I actually go for engineering? Should I go for the common known degrees like mechanical or civil? Or should I pick something that's new or something that I like, which is a very niche degree? But before all of that, you have to consider the fact that you actually are passionate about engineering and you actually like you know, physics or math, and you enjoy sciences, you enjoy problem solving. And I would suggest, this is a tip, if you love things more than people, yeah, go for engineering, definitely. But even if you don't, if you like some parts of engineering for physics, for maths, yeah, definitely try for it. However, the one thing I should point out, engineering is just like they mentioned in law, engineering is a very grueling degree. You have to work a lot on it. And I don't mean just university, right? You have to study a lot. Yeah, you have to pass those exams, but you have to build your skills outside of university to get the right internship and to get the right jobs. So you'll have to do a lot of self-building. There are plenty of opportunities online to do courses online, to do boot camps, to get certified, and certain free courses as well, which Google or even Harvard and Cisco and all of these companies provide. But you will have to be doing that while you're doing university. So just doing university in today's age, just doing engineering can get you a job for sure. But if you do all of these things on the side, it's pretty much the way to go in the future. And next slide, please. Okay, yeah, these are some new fields which I would say, you know, people should look into, you know, look into it, look at what I suggest to anyone when looking into an engineering field, go to YouTube and just search a day in the life of the engineering field, day in the life of computer engineer, day in the life of energy engineer, and just watch what they do, what they talk about, and look into the jobs, look into the thing you have to study for the job, and figure out if that's something that interests you, even if you don't understand it completely, which you won't at this point, but just look at it if you understand it or not, and then maybe try for it. So these fields, I'm not going to go into each of them, but they're just some fields which are new and upcoming, and they have a lot of people looking into them right now. Next slide, please. Okay, now engineering in Germany. I think everyone knows about all the car companies, you know, from Germany, like Volkswagen, BMW. We have Audi as well. We have a lot of chemical engineering companies like Bayer and Merck. We have energy companies, Enercon, and then we have Siemens and Brown, you know, with electronics and such. So Germany is famous for, of course, mainly for cars and auto engineering, but overall, I think it's one of the best countries to do the cliche degrees, mechanical, civil, electrical engineering. However, they have a wide variety of engineering degrees. And let me just list the reasons why it's really good to do engineering in Germany. Of course, the main thing that people have heard of is Germany is free in terms of tuition costs. There are some caveats to that. It's not technically 100% free. Yes, there is no tuition fees, but that's only in public universities. I will explain that going forward. This is for bachelor programs, undergraduates. There aren't many opportunities to study in English. You have to know that. So if you're planning to go for a public university, meaning study for free with no tuition cost, you have to learn German. In fact, even some master courses in Germany are also in German. So if you're not willing to put in the time to learn German, it's going to be tough to get options for universities because there aren't many options there. And of course, getting jobs in Germany is actually a pretty good option, especially this time as well. Even for students doing part-time jobs what we have 3 different types of jobs: part-time, there's mini jobs, or there's work student jobs. Even in engineering fields, even for internships, there's a lot of opportunities here in Germany because there are a lot of engineering companies that have factories and offices over here. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. These are the programs which I could look up, and I found that they were available in one of the best universities in Germany, and which are also considered one of the best universities in Europe, and overall also considered best universities in the world according to the QS rankings. These are also available in almost, I would say, all of the TU universities or the city universities. So almost every city in Germany has their own university. Like, for example, the university where I'm living in Duisburg has a university called University of Duisburg-Essen, 2 cities combined. And most of these courses are available in all of these. And this is where Germany is basically leading in the world. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the first differentiating factor I would like to put into place is public universities versus private universities. Mainly, it's not really easy, but it's easier to get an admission into private universities than it is to get into public. Because of course, public universities, the government is technically paying your tuition fees. So the admissions is harder. There is a semester fee, which is, yes, German universities do provide aeronautical engineering. However, not many of them do. There's only a few of them that provide aeronautical, and even less than a few that provide aerospace. There are links to search programs. So I'm answering a question which just came up in the chat. There are links to all the search engines which have been provided in the resources section, and you can definitely look up everything you need for that. Getting back on the public versus private universities. So there's a semester free in public universities, and each semester is 6 months in Germany. The exams finish off before the 6 months, so you do get holidays depending on when your last exam finishes and when your first class for the next semester starts. 2 semesters per year, and most engineering degrees are for 3 years. So you have 6 semesters. However, there is no cap here. Like, it's not definite that you have to finish in 3 years, because the university just gives you a plan for 3 years, but most students on average finish in 4 years. And you have to pay around 330, 350 euros per semester. What you get with that is some student services. You get a student ticket, a semester ticket, which you can travel in your region, which your university is located in, for absolutely free. The buses, the trains, you don't have to pay for any of that. Private universities, they do have a tuition cost, which as compared to the rest of the world is relatively, I would say, okay, as per their ranking and as per the education that they provide. And of course, most private universities are international universities, and even if they're German, they provide a lot of English courses. So you will not have a German problem in most private universities. Public universities also have a more difficult admission procedure, and there are more requirements, and you have to be spot on with everything. If you miss one document here and there, they'll reject your entire application just because of one missing document. That happens quite a lot. Let's move on to the next page. Okay, now there's also something, this is the second differentiator, which is universities, and then we have something called Hochschule, or Universities of Applied Sciences. This is a completely German system. It's not there in the rest of the world. Therefore, it's possible that your degree or your course from Hochschule will not be recognized in the rest of the world. But of course, in most European countries, it will be. And if you're planning to stay in Germany, it is a pretty good option. What is a Hochschule? It's basically if you want to do more practical work than theory. They also have easier admission requirements. There's a very well-known Hochschule called Hochschule Rheinwald, which has every single course in English. Again, it's a 3-year program, and you can apply it to the same portal that you apply to German universities. You only need an IELTS and TOEFL. You don't need any German whatsoever. Even the first level is not required. And they make you do an internship as part of the university degree course, and most students end up getting a job in the same company that they did their work experience with. However, it is considered less valuable as than a degree, and a university degree is paid more in Germany. How, like, of course, if that's something you have to look at. Other than that, we can move on to the next page. Okay, now let's get on to the most difficult part, I would say, of actually, I would put this at the most second difficult part of the German application, which is the German language. The first difficult part is the application itself. But the German language is divided into 6 different levels. A1, A2 being the basic levels, B1, B2 being intermediate, and C1, C2 being advanced. You don't have to look at C2. C2 is for teachers who want to teach German. Most fully fledged German universities require you to have C1 qualification when you apply for university. This is when you have 13 years of education. I have that in the next slide as well when I come to application, but I'm going to mention that earlier, that for all German universities, you have to have 13 years of education. Now, I know the Pakistani board is 12 years, as well as the Indian board, and I will explain the process for 12 years of education, and even if you did just AS later on as well. But I just wanted to mention that here, after you do your 13 years of education, and you're applying for university, you have to have till C1, your C1 certificate, the official one, and you have to submit that using a university portal, which I'll be mentioning ahead as well. And there are different ways to do the German language. The biggest, I would say, platform for it and the main government institute is called Goethe Institute. It's also one of the most expensive ones. However, it's one of the highest rated ones, and it's directly linked to the German government. And therefore, if you do it from Goethe Institute, you won't have any problems getting your certificate violated or attested in any German university. I personally did my German language online, partially because of COVID. And I did it from the second name, if you see, Eurasia Language Institute. And I did up till B1 online, and I ended up doing B2 with my university. I will explain a little bit about my process because it was very rare due to Corona afterwards. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the students who have done 12 years of education, aka for the Pakistani board students and for the Indian board students, we have something called student colleague, which is equivalent to what we say foundation. By the way, I copied this slide off from the second session. I think it was Yumna, but like, yeah, I didn't change anything about it because it was perfect. So the student colleague, there are a lot of Pakistani and mostly Indian students who come here, and this is one of the most common pathway to get into university. It's a foundation year, basically. You don't have to know German before you enter, but you have to know there are 2 types of student colleagues. There's the free one, and there's the not free one. The free one, of course, requires you to have German up till B1. That's the 3rd level, by the way. The non-free one is in completely English, and you have to pay money for it. And basically, by the end of it, you will have to have German because they will teach you German along with it. Both of them do, actually. But then the difference is that, you know, you have to have German proficiency before for one of them. The other one, you have to pay money. With a student colleague, there are some student colleagues linked to universities directly. And then there are common student colleagues which just help you study for the exam, the FSP exam, which will basically help you get into a lot of universities. For example, my university is linked with another university as well, FH Aachen and Duisburg Essen. And to get into both of these universities, there's one student colleague. So if you do that, you pass the exam, you can get into either one. Next page. Okay, now let's get to the application for applying to Germany. There's a lot of there's a few things over here which I have purposefully left out because I felt like they were not as important. However, the next upcoming page regarding the visa is going to be a full flash of information, and yeah, it's going to be a lot, and I'll kind of try to skim through this so I can get more on that because I feel like the visa is the more important part. There are more students who get an application, who get a university admission and then get rejected by the visa than there are who actually get accepted to university, by the way. So talking about the university application, you can apply to a lot of universities through like just directly. But the best platform for international students is UniAssist. UniAssist is like a UCAS portal for the UK. It's a one portal system, one portal for most universities, but some universities opt out of it. They want you to apply directly through their system or through email as well. I'll just answer a quick question here. Is student colleague a requirement only for engineering or other programs too? No, the student colleague is a requirement for other programs as well. There's student colleagues for different courses, for engineering, for arts, and one for economics as well. So there's different types of student colleagues, and you have to know which one to take, which one to apply for. On the slide there, there's a small picture right below the German logo, the German flag. You could go back, yeah, which mentions which course you have to take basically, and that's the student colleague should take to go into an engineering degree. It would be the T course for an engineering degree basically. Yeah, you can go back to the slide. Okay. You have to apply, sorry, the previous one. Yeah, you can apply to the university directly. It's a much easier process if you're applying directly because the university will tell you all the documents that are needed and you just are in direct contact with them. UniAssist, however, is very, very strict. They have a set criteria for, it's already mentioned on the system that for this university, you need these documents. You have to fit in those documents. And when you click apply, by the way, you have to apply for each university. You have to apply for each university separately. That means you have to pay for every application separately. And once it's gone, it's gone. You can add on documents afterwards, but by the end, when the university checks your application and if there's anything missing, you'll have to apply again next year because they'll outright reject you. You might even have to post attested copies of your certificates, your school education, like your your high school graduation certificates or your exams for A-level exams or level exam certificates attested from school. You might have to get copies of that, get it signed from your school, attested from the German consulate in Dubai, and then post them to the UniAssist address in Germany for verification. That would be written on the UniAssist portal itself, if that's necessary or not. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, you have to have your German certificates with you when applying. Also, German universities don't accept expected grades. This is all for the British curriculum students. Deadlines, I think someone just mentioned, the German universities provide with semesters to start in December, January. Yes, we have 2 semesters a year. The semester start is the first semester starts, the winter semester starts in September, October. And the summer semester starts in March, April. So right now I'm having holidays until April 5th, and then my next semester starts. So this is my winter semester just finished up. And this is quite an important point. I should put this in bold. It is recommended to submit applications at least 6 weeks before the deadline. The earlier you submit, the more chances you have. It's not explicitly mentioned everywhere, but even during my application time, my friend who applied with me, who had the almost exact same grades and everything, he didn't get in because he applied late. So they didn't specifically say that. They just said that they wouldn't allow his grades, but there was no difference at all. So if you apply late, they have a certain seat issue which they don't specifically mention. Therefore, it's best to always have your documents ready beforehand. Next slide, please. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, university requirements, 13 years of schooling. If you've done A-levels, then you have to have 4 AS subjects and 3 complete A-levels. You have to have a mathematics, a natural science, any bio, chem, or physics, and a language. It can be any language. It can be Urdu, it can be English, doesn't matter. This is for A-levels. If you have done Pakistani board, then you have to go for a studying colleague, or you do 1 year of university in the UAE or any other country, for example. That will be considered as a 13 year of education. You have to submit your transcripts when you're applying through UniAssist. And if your course has partial English, you have to submit your IELTS and TOEFL as well. And the grade requirements are also mentioned in the next pages. Yeah, go next. This is just some of the top universities. I'm just going to skip this through. Next page. Okay. Yes. So there are a lot of visa requirements when applying, even after you've gotten your admission to a German university. You have to submit your proof of admission. You will have an interview, by the way, after you submit all these things. And if you take this all with you when you're going for the interview as well, you have to submit your German certificates. You have to submit your English proficiency if you need it. All your certificates of school have to be attested. If they're Pakistani, then you still have to get them attested from the German consulate as well. Your CV, you have to write a letter of motivation. Basically, a letter of motivation is why you think that you're fit for that university, why you want to join that university, and why they should give you a seat in that university. That's about it. The biggest factor that people don't really know about is the block bank account. Germany wants you to make a bank account in Germany and send around 10,333 euros, which go around about 42,000 dirhams at one time to that account. And you have to show this at the visa center, and this money will be given to you per month around 860 euros, and it's basically your allowance for 1 year. They want to know that you're stable for 1 year. So when applying for visa, you have to do this beforehand. There are ways of getting around it using letter of declaration or a sponsorship, but this is the most common way that people get through it. And most of this can be done through an app called Fintiba, which also gives you student health insurance. Next page, next page. I'm going to skip through this. This is just an overall cost of things that are not really mentioned online or in other places. So this is just for your information. Next page, please. Okay, scholarships. I have linked this as well if you see link 16 and 17. So there are multiple scholarships available. Now, wait a second. Why scholarship? I thought there was no semester fee in the first place. Yes, there isn't. That means you actually get paid per month as like an allowance. So you can pay your rent with that. You pay your food, groceries, your insurance, your health insurance, which is quite expensive, by the way. And all of this is covered. It usually costs around 860 a month, your monthly allowances, and a lot of these insurances pay the whole, your scholarships pay the whole thing for you for the month. Next page. I think I'm done. Yeah, these are all the resources. You can look up everything. It's all linked to the pages above. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the chat.
This is phenomenal. And I had to, like, if I had this presentation in high school that you all are doing, I would have known so much more, like specifically what could fit within my financial, budget, what could fit my interests, what are the possibilities. This is gold in terms of information. And I feel bad cutting it short to this much. But there were a couple of questions in the chat. Is studying colleague a requirement only for engineering or other programs too?
I think I actually mentioned all the answers for the questions while I was speaking as well, but I'll go over it again. I don't have an issue with that. No, if you've done 12 years of education, for most degree courses in Germany, you need 13 years. So therefore, you will have to do student colleague, but it will be a student colleague for a different program, a different student colleague for engineering, different for arts, different for economics.
And I think, yes, you addressed the same question as well about do German universities start in December.
Yes.
I think you said they do. All right. So with that, Arslan, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. I think you've opened up windows of possibilities for a lot of students. Okay, on to the next one. We have, so as you guys might notice, basically this session is overtaken by the Khadim family. They're dominating it. So mashallah, each of them is doing such amazing things that I'm so glad this is a platform for them to share. So over to the young Khadim, Zainab, to talk about architecture.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm going to be talking about architecture, and just a bit of an overview. I did architectural engineering from Ajman University here in UAE. First of all, I'm not sure if a lot of you know what architecture is, because even when I jumped into architecture, I didn't really know what I was getting into. It just intrigued me seeing, like, I visited the university and it just intrigued me seeing the buildings and the models, and I was like, okay, I want to do that. So I really didn't know what architecture was, but like, for example, if you just look at these buildings on your screen, this is just an example of what you're going to be ending up doing. Obviously down the year, maybe like 10 years down your degree, that's like a different conversation, but then this is what you're going to be making when you're an architecture student. So these buildings, basically not making them, designing them. There's a difference between designing something and actually building it, because building is something civil engineers do. That's their job. But architects is what we design and what we conceptualize when it comes to building. So if a client comes to me and goes like, okay, I want to make a 3-floor building which looks like XYZ, like, and then it's my job to actually sit and design it based on the requests, based on the site and all of that kind of stuff. So this is just an example of what you might be doing if you get into architecture. Next slide, please. Okay, why you should study architecture? I think that's the biggest question, because again, not a lot of people know what architecture is, and why would you think that you want to get into a field like this? I think this is a very good field for people who are creative and imaginative, but they also do not want to go into fields like arts, which are just creative and not really engineering or anything. So it's like a two-in-one option for everyone. You can do architecture and have an official degree, or you can do architectural engineering, which has concepts of engineering. So at the end of the day, when you apply for jobs, you have a much wider option when it comes to applying for jobs. You mainly work with sketches and drawings, so it's kind of like, you know, you're going to be using softwares, but then it's all an imaginative creative process when it comes to being in architecture. And you not necessarily will be working in a cubicle. It'll be a lot of more collaborative work when it comes to your job life. Also, it just depends on which company you go in. So if you go in international companies, it's a lot more collaborative work, group work happening. So your work environment is not going to be sitting on the desk 9 to 5 and that's it. It's going to be a bit more than what you would expect for in a normal job. Also, it's a very challenging degree, because when it comes to architecture, it's a lot of practical work. And so if, for example, if someone tells me to make a report, I can make it in an hour, but when it comes to practical work, it's going to take me 4 hours for the same work in terms of a report. So you have to understand that when you're signing up for architecture, you should keep that in mind, that it's a very time consuming course. Next slide, please. Okay, just for you to open your variety of universities, there are so many universities here who offer architecture. Now, there's a difference between just doing architecture and doing architectural engineering. So when you're doing architecture, it's mainly just design based. You're just going to be designing buildings, and you're going to learning how designing concepts and those kind of things. But when you're doing architectural engineering, it's all about learning design a little bit, and then it's more engineering to do it. So it's all related to your building engineering systems, like, you know, your plumbing, your walls, and these kind of things. So you have to kind of understand those two differences. And when you apply for universities, a lot of the courses will be like bachelor's in engineering, or it will be like bachelor's in architecture. So you have to make sure that you know what you're signing up for, read up the course material, and understand what kind of courses there are. And if you're more interested in engineering fields, but want to do something which is not like mechanical, electrical, architecture is a great option. But if you are more interested in the creative aspect of things, imaginative aspect of things, go into architecture. So these are just some of the universities which offer, and they all offer different kinds of varieties of architectures. Next slide, please. So when it comes to my pathway of what I did to do architecture, I did it from Ajman University. And it's a 5-year course, and I did it in Bachelor's of Engineering. So it was like Bachelor's of Engineering in Architecture. But just bear in mind, if you go into Ajman University, even though the name is engineering, it doesn't really teach you engineering. So that's the mistake I did. I didn't actually read the course material before I went into engineering. I just went into it, and I would really suggest you to read the courses that you're going to take up in the universities to understand if that's really engineering or if that's really architecture. If I had a choice now, I would do Bachelor's of Architecture and not really engineering, because I'm more interested in architecture. But now I have a degree, so I can't really go back and change that at this point. But just a pointer. In terms of requirements, you don't really need specific subjects to get into architecture. A lot of people have the misconception that you need maths and physics, and that's what you're going to be learning in the universities. That's really not the case, because if you go for design courses, you don't need any specific subject for it. The usual university requirements are usually like science subjects. So, you know, maths, physics, math, and then some of the science subjects, but then you can still apply with like, you know, other subjects. But it's going to be easier to get into it if you have science subjects. But if you have economics, arts, maybe some universities might get you in, but that's just very specific universities which might allow. But it's usually going in with science subjects, and there are different criteria for different universities. I have it in the next slide, by the way, what grades you would need, like in terms of percentages. But for Ajman universities, it was like 70 to 80% grades. And then also in terms of scholarships, in Ajman University, in the first semester, if you have a really high percentage, which is like around 85 to 90% of grades, you can get 20% scholarship in the first semester itself. And then you also have different scholarships for each semester based on how high your GPA is. So it has a good scholarship system. So throughout the year, you're still getting some kind of scholarships if you maintain your GPA to a certain level. you need English proficiency exams, which almost all the universities need, like TOEFL and IELTS. And then for Pakistani boards, you need 12 years of schooling, and then obviously like a minimum 45% grades. Now, just bear in mind, what I did in university to get into university was I didn't do 12th grade. I only did 11th grade, which is O levels. And at that time, Ajman University was still accepting people after 11th grade. And I think they still do, but you might need to kind of contact them for that specific information, that if they accept me after, that's only for British students, by the way, it's not for Pakistani board. You still need 12th grade for Pakistani board. But then for British students, if you're only doing 11th grade O levels, you can get into the university, do your 5 years course. And then what I'm doing now is I did A levels privately. So I just enrolled into British University to do A levels privately, because I might need it for immigration, or I might need it to get my bachelor's degree attested. So instead of going for 2 years of education during school time, I decided that I don't want to spend 2 years going through the whole A-level process. That was just going to be too much for me. So I saved those 2 years, and then now I'm doing A-levels privately. So, and I feel like that's personally, that's what I felt was, and it's good for me. Like I saved those 2 years from my life and that whole hectic process, and then I'm doing privately. So it's just very dependent on you. So Ajman University does that. So if you really want to do it, if you're a British student, and if you really want to do it after O levels, please contact them directly. Right now on their website, it says after 12th grade, but I still know some of my juniors who are still getting into the university after 11th grade. And if that's something you are okay with, spending A levels after, like doing A levels after university or during university, for whatever reasons, because some jobs require you to do A levels to get your degrees attested, but some jobs don't. So you really have to look at your options, weigh your options and what you want to do. Next slide, please. This is just a very brief overview table I've created of some of the universities. There are a lot more universities, as I've put in the earlier slide. And then like just what kind of courses they give. So do they give engineering, or do they give design based? Do they give bachelor's in science? And they're all different at the end of the day. And then how many years is it? And the tuition fees. The tuition fees varies a lot for each universities, and also what kind of benefits you're going to be getting, and also accreditation. I feel like accreditation is something that you need to look at when you're going into universities, because if your degree isn't really accredited from a good body, if you go internationally, you really need to look into those systems. And just a last pointer is, once you do architecture, you don't really need to run a license exam or anything like that. You can just straight away go into your job, get a job, and work into field. There's no licensing requirements or anything like that. So after 5 or 4 years, depending on your course, you just apply for jobs and you get into it. And also the opportunities once you do architecture are just endless. Like I can just say never ending, because architecture is such a wide field. For you to get any job, it's going to be easy, because if it's design based, or if it's sustainability, environmental based, if it's like literally anything you name, apart from obviously medicine, those things, you can't really do that when you're doing architecture. But it's a very wide field for you to get into, like a gaming, how to make games. You can kind of get that through architecture, also have that base, and then develop yourself on how to build guilds, and then become an app developer kind of thing, So it's also like you put in the work while you're doing architecture. Just university degree will not allow you to get those jobs. You need to put a lot of work on yourself, learn softwares and all that kind of thing. And right now, that's what I'm doing. I'm not really doing an engineering job. I'm doing a job in sustainability, because I was interested in that, and architecture kind of led me my way through that, and also like urban planning. So it's just a lot of opportunities. So please look at this, but do your own research. Do not depend on this, because this is just a very basic thing. And I've linked to resources in the next slide, so that'll help you out. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
That was great. Are there any questions? That was really so comprehensively covered, and I love all the research you guys have done to compare the different options that are there. All right, with that, let's continue on to medicine in the UAE. Dr. Shaista, who's also the head of health team.
So the senior Khadim gets the least time. Right? All right. Okay, cool. Hi guys. Introduction's already done, but quickly just introduce myself again for those of you who came in later. My name is Dr. Shaista Khadim. I am a graduate from Ras Al Khaimah Medical and Health Science University, batch of 2019. Went on to do my internship job, and currently I'm pursuing my specialization in the pediatrics department in Jalila Children's Hospital. Before I jump into medicine in the UAE, there's a few things that I just point out. Is first of all, medicine is actually, I mean, the field of medicine and medicine healthcare in general in UAE is really rapidly growing. With this rapid growth means, you have a lot of opportunities also that come in. When I started back in 2014, there were just around 5 colleges, and then just within a span of 5 years, 2 more popped up. COVID has been a boon and a bane for healthcare workers in the sense that it has opened up a lot of job opportunities for healthcare workers. At the same time, the nature of these jobs is, stressful and overwhelming. So that's also an aspect, that has helped in some ways for us. Just average range of years to get your degree if you're pursuing medicine in the UAE is 5 to 7 years. And I'll explain why this difference is there. Average annual fee range the starting is 100,000 in some universities, and the maximum the university goes up to is 160,000 per year. And this, by the way, is only the tuition fees. Lecturemen, your tuition fees versus other fees. Other fees can be your examination fees, they charge you for things like your lab coats and those miscellaneous things. But this 100,000 to 160,000 is just your tuition fees. And last pointer is that UAE is one country, but it has 3 different health bodies, which I'll explain why these are important to know. You have the Ministry of Health, which is basically Sharjah and all the Northern Emirates. They come under the Ministry of Health. You have the DHA, which is the Dubai Health Authority, which is essentially for Dubai itself. And Siha is for Abu Dhabi and Al Ain. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I hope this is clear to everyone. If you're still here sticking around, that means you're really interested in medicine. Okay, and you want to do medicine here in the UAE. One thing I think it's just a joke now is that you can never get rid of exams once you enter medicine, which whether you take it as in a joking manner or you're serious, there's no running away. There are exams at every point, at every phase of your life. And at this point, it's just become more like, you could say, a routine habit. I don't even know how that's possible, but that's just something, we doctors end up gaining a superpower to. Okay, so what's the pathway if you start, if you want to do medicine in the UAE? Okay, so you can do any board, the Pakistani system, the Indian system, American, you have the British curriculum. All of these curriculums are accepted, right? But each curriculum, the subjects and the scores for each subject, it's all available on the website, which is actually one of the best things I would say of the universities here is that everything is available on the website. Like, alhamdulillah, you don't have to scour much, go visit the universities yourself, which back in our country, like Pakistan, it's a task, to get information, in terms of subjects and things like that. Before I go into this, just a quick backdrop as to why I pursued medicine in the UAE and why I didn't travel, why I didn't go back to my country, which initially was the plan. But having said that, that was the initial plan. But then I have my family who lives here. My parents were not willing to send me all by myself to live there, either in the dorms or, we could not have 2 split families, which is why, we ended up looking at options here as well, here in the UAE. Okay. So Angel, what's your pathway? Once you finish your A-levels, your 12th grade, 12th or 13th, you're gonna start looking at at the universities, and I'm going to tell you in the next slide. Each of these universities, when I joined in 2014, we did not have the entrance exam, but over the course of the years, all of these universities have established an entrance exam, and some of them also have an interview as well, right? So you will give the entrance exam plus minus the interviews, and these entrance exams honestly are very basic. I would say they're not like the MCAT that we have in Pakistan, which is extremely competitive, and you have negative marking and 10,000 complexities. But here, they're actually very straightforward, basic biophysics, chemistry portion that's there. Okay, and then plus minus the interview. So then you enter. Some of these colleges have a foundation year first. 1 year foundation, and then you start your 5-year MBBS degree. Some colleges directly start your 5-year MBBS journey, right? After you're done with 5 or 6 years of your MBBS, some universities will give you the degree right away. Here you go, you're a graduate. Now you can go do internship anywhere in the world you want. Some of them have it mandatory that no, you have to finish the 1 year internship with us, and then we'll hand over the degree to you. Regardless, whatever happens, whether it's after 5 or 6 years, you have to have 1 year internship, which is called the house job for medicine. It is 1 year mandatorily, and it is a training that you do in different hospitals, right? After you finish this, you're an MBBS graduate, right? You have the degree, you're a graduate. But can you practice yet? No, I'm sorry, you can't, right? So you have to, now is the time that you're going to sit for the licensing exams. Remember when I told you about the 3 different bodies, the Ministry of Health, DHA, and SEHA? All of these have their own licensing exam, right? This is the GP, the General Practitioner Licensing exam that I'm talking about, right? So if you want to practice, let's say in Sharjah, you're going to go for the Ministry of Health exam. If you want to practice in Dubai, you're going to go for the DHA exam. Once you clear the General Practitioner License exam, you have the eligibility letter with you, and then you're going to start applying to jobs. Once you get a job, they're going to activate your license, right? And then you come into clinical practice. This is if you opt to stay a general practitioner, at least for the temporary, or you do not want to specialize. However, if you wish to specialize in a particular field, because remember, general practitioner is general for all the fields, right? But if you want to specialize, like someone like me, I wanted to specialize in pediatrics, kids, right? So now the process is that after you get your, in this case, you do not have to write the licensing exam, right? After you finish your internship, you take a different pathway, which is you're going to jump into the loop of the residency exam. There's a different exam for the residency. You write this residency exam, and then with this exam score, you're going to apply to different health bodies. Same, the Ministry of Health, SEHA, and DHA. You're going to apply to these health bodies, and then they're going to call you for interviews, right? Each hospital has its own interview system. Everything's online. Everyone's really up to date online, so everything is done online in a very efficient manner. Okay, once you go through the exam and the interview, you're going to get a seat, which is called the matching process. You get a seat and you enter your residency. What is residency? It's just the specialization, right? It can be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on which field you're choosing. Like pediatrics that I've chosen is a 4-year program, right? So during these 4 years, it's a full-time paid job. You're not paying anything to the hospital for this training. They are paying you because they are, you could say, utilizing you're the manpower. They're utilizing you, for the healthcare system. So they're paying you. At the same time, you're gonna be trained. Plus, you will write these exams in between, the residency exams. This is the only point where you will pay. You have to pay for these exams, right? So 4 years, you've done your exams, you've done your training, and then at the end of 4 years, you come out as a specialist. This process is, once you're a specialist, now you don't have to write. You can, with this specialist license itself, you can apply for jobs, right? So I hope I didn't confuse you guys. This was just a very basic pathway of how to get into medicine, what happens after you get your degree. There's 2 pathways: go into a general practitioner, or continue, you want to do your residency, stay here in the UAE and continue, right? Next slide, please. Okay, this is my last slide, I promise. Okay, before I jump into this slide, one thing to note is when you're selecting the university that you want to go to, whether it's UAE or anywhere in the world, very importantly, you need to ensure that the university is listed, the medical university is listed in the WHO Avicenna directory, the Ibn Sina directory. If it's not listed in that, then your degree actually doesn't hold a value after you get it. You can pay all of that money and stuff. Your degree will not be valued. They will not think that you have a medicine degree wherever you go. Good thing is all the universities that are there in the UAE, they're all Avicenna, they're all in the directory, so you don't have to worry about that bit. There are essentially 7 universities that are in the UAE. 6 out of these are open to expats. The 7th one is only for locals, so I didn't even bother putting down the name for that. It's the UAE University. All right. So you have the 6 that I've listed down here: RAC Medical and Health Science University. That's where I've graduated from. You have GMU Gulf Medical University, DMCG Dubai Medical College for Girls, MBRU Mohammed bin Rashid University, AU, which is Ajman University, and UOS is University of Sharjah. All right. So if you look at the tuition fees, they're all, like I said, range between 100,000 to 160,000. So MBRU, if you see, it goes up to 160,000. This is only the tuition fees, right? So I think with the other costs and stuff, it can go up to 165, I'm assuming. But that information you can get more from the website that I've put for each of these, right? Number of years. For RAC, you have foundation year. So once you enter RAC, you have 5 years of your medicine plus 1 year of internship, and that's it. Then you move on to the next phase, right? For GMU, also you have 5 plus 1 year. For DMCG, it's the same 5 plus 1 year. For Mohammed bin Rashid, also same. For Ajman University, they have a foundation year. For both Ajman University and University of Sharjah, you have the foundation year, then you have 5 years of medicine, and then the year of internship. Now, for both of these, the foundation year is a different cost. If you see, I've put that down. For Ajman University, the foundation year will cost you around 82,000. And for University of Sharjah, it's around 80,000. This is the foundation year. And then for the 5 years after that, the MBBS years, the fees is 121 and 107 respectively, okay? However, point to be noted here is that after the foundation year, there is no guarantee that you will continue as in the medicine program. In RAC itself, we used to have students that finished the foundation year in, let's say, University of Sharjah, but they sometimes have really high merit, and they're not able to. They start filtering out students. It's like that, right? And then after they filter out, they tell the rest of the students to leave. So then they've spent the foundation year, and now they have to look for other universities, right? So that's I mean, their competition is top notch, you could say, but then at the same time, you've spent that 1 year doing foundation. For me, I didn't want to go to University of Sharjah. I did not want to waste the foundation year. I had spent 2 years doing A level. So I had done 12th and 13th. For me, it made no sense whatsoever to enter a foundation year and relearn all of those things and spend almost the same amount of money. So University of Sharjah was out of the picture altogether. Right. One thing also is that for DMCG right now, the admissions are closed, so I didn't get much information about that. Whenever they open up, I'll hopefully try and send some message through. But all the others, the admissions, everything's up there on the website. Okay. If you look at scholarships again is a task to get in universities here. You get 2 scholarships. One, when you enter the program, so you get based on the high school grades, right? For some of them, for GMU, they don't have any scholarship whatsoever. For some of the other colleges, they do have, depending on the top highest percentages of students that are coming in, they give you scholarships. And the other scholarship that you get is during the 5 years that you're doing medicine, depending on your GPA, right? So they can give the top students maximum, some universities like University of Sharjah give up to 50% scholarship as well. But again, the competition is really tough to get these scholarships, okay? Training hospitals is very important. I studied in RAC, so one of the biggest challenges for me was part of my training was in RAC and the other part was in Fujairah, and I live in Sharjah, and I did not move to the dorm. So you can understand, it was a daily commute to RAC back and forth, and Fujairah back and forth, right? I've put down location, and the website is basically, honestly, when you just click on these websites, all the information is up there. But even then, if you guys are stuck at some point, feel free to just drop me a message and I can clear out any doubts that you guys have, right? I'm done for my part. Do you want me to take any questions, Bushra?
Let's take questions really quickly, 2 minutes. Wow, that was actually extremely informative though, Dr. Shaista.
I thought I'm going to confuse everybody.
Well, the big takeaway was for me, don't study medicine. But
Ouch,
But,
that's not what I was hoping for, but okay. Okay.
all right. I think we've got, are there any questions coming through? Okay,
I
no
don't
worries.
think it has anything. Okay.
So with that, let's move on to dentistry really quickly. I know Zoha just cannot wait to talk about dentistry, so let's give it to her.
Hello, Assalamualaikum. Oh no, wait, hold on.
You had to make a grand entrance, Zoha. We just know it. We can see you in one camera. And I'm going to pin that chat so everybody can see you. Oh, yes, I need to make you co-host. Which account? Yes, I'm making you co-host. So now you should be able to speak.
Okay, everyone can hear me?
Yes.
And not like 3 versions of me? Yeah, okay. Hello, Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm Zoha. I am a doctor of dental medicine, and I think that Dr. Chaisa has made my job quite a bit easier because it'll be very easy for me to transition into explaining how dentistry is, because dentistry and medicine, the procedures sort of overlap quite a bit. Okay, this is just, I'm very thankful to one of my teachers because when we were studying, she would, sometimes the subjects can get pretty dry. So we had a lot of dental memes. So, if you were to ever search up, you're going to find a lot of dental memes. So this is just one of them that I found that's very apt. Anyway, so I'll move on to the next slide. All right. So I'll start a little bit before we go there, combining why I choose dentistry and my own sort of story, as our previous speakers have been telling us about. I feel like for dentistry and medicine, like these medical fields, you need to know a lot earlier on. Yeah, this is the path that I'm going towards. So for instance, the good thing about a lot of other fields is that you can pick them up at any point. But that's sort of the downside of medical and dentistry, but also not really, because these are very, very sort of full effort and all in sort of subjects. So unless and until you know from a very long time that this is what you want to do, it's going to get really hard, because it gets really hard. These subjects, they get really hard. And then in the long run, जो motivation होती है, उसका you tend to lose motivation if it's not something you were all in for. So yeah, so generally you would know what the requirements are for medical subjects. You need to have the sciences in your GCSEs, या जो आपके क्या कहते हैं, after I think 7th or 8th, आपकी जो specialty होती है, the subjects that you choose younger from like earlier on are all going to be medical subjects, or medical streams होती हैं, या science subjects होते हैं. So that's where you go for. Now for dentistry, why I chose dentistry, when I was in high school, I knew I was like, either I'm going to do medicine or I'm going to become an English teacher. Now I know they're very different, but after A levels, I was pretty sure that what I wanted to do was English actually. लेकिन एक दिमाग में पहले से था कि medicine का है, तो वो दोनों कीड़े जो है वो मौजूद थे दिमाग में. So when I finished with my high school and I started university, I actually started with English literature. But I wasn't very happy with the course, and I had prepared myself for the medical field. So I did have those grades in my pocket as well. So when I wasn't happy with English, I switched. Instead of medicine, I went for dentistry. Now, the reason I went for dentistry was because, honestly, the timings and taking your sort of lifestyle into account, and I feel like maybe Dr. Faisal will agree with me, that dentistry can be a little bit easier to manage with your family life and in general with your lifestyle. Of course, medicine, there are a lot of specialties. So once you're getting the specialties done, then I'm sure it gets easier. Like the training for medicine is a lot harder. You have a lot of, right, there we go. So they have a lot more, their training hours are more, they have on-call duties, emergency ke jo sare jo hote hain, rounds hote hain, those are much harder. So I felt like if I wanted to pursue my passion for writing or for English, so I felt like dentistry was a more feasible, lifestyle-wise, it was a more feasible choice. I believe it's a combination of art and medicine, and as I said, flexible work timings. Another thing with dentistry is once you're done with your undergrad degree in dentistry, you don't necessarily have to specialize. Just say for medicine also, you can do the same thing. You can choose to do that. But then there is more of a demand for dental general practitioners than, again, this could be from like from my limited research, than there are for medical GPs. So there's a lot more you can do as a GP in dentistry. And another reason I chose it is because I love interacting with people, and working with patients is something that I really enjoyed. So it's a people-centered field. Now the degrees that are offered, if you are going to go into the research, when you're going to be checking out what degrees you're going to be pursuing in dentistry, you're going to find 3 different abbreviations. So that's BDS, DDS, and DMD. They're all sort of mean the same thing, but they're sort of centered towards jahan se degree aap padh ke aa rahe ho. The US it may be called DDS or DMD over there. UK it might be called something else, but it's all the same thing technically. It's BDS, they all mean the same thing. So in the end, what you're coming out with is still sort of the same degree, and it's very easily interchangeable. Okay, I wouldn't say easily, but it is interchangeable between countries. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So for dental medicine in the UAE, your requirements are generally, just say for most universities in the UAE, just hote hain. You will require a secondary school certificate. You require equivalency. For University of Sharjah, as Dr. Shaista was also mentioning, it's very competitive. So they take you into the foundation year, and they normally don't take you in if you have a percentage less than 94%. So aapka jo high school diploma hota hai, jo aapka high school hota hai, they convert that into percentages, and then at your entrance stage, they're going to check ke iski percentage kitni ban rahi hai. So generally, when you're applying for the foundation year, be it medicine or dentistry, they will they say 95%, but they do go down to 94, 93 tak bhi le lete hain. But that's where you start from. You study the foundation year with medical and dental students at the same time. At the end of the foundation year, the medical students do have a choice. They can switch to dentistry if they haven't gotten the correct grades enough for medicine. So they do get pushed into dentistry. But the dentistry students who have declared that they're joining in for dentistry don't get to choose to medicine, as to my knowledge. The US program that's how it goes. They have 1 year foundation, 5 years BDS program, which is how it is worldwide, most of the places. I believe Pakistan mein 4 saal ka hai, but I think I'll let Aisha shed light on that one. And then you have the 1 year internship, which is very similar to the medicine one as well. Most of the universities that you're going to see that teach dentistry are affiliated directly with hospitals at the same time. So University of Sharjah ka jo hospital hai, that's the University Dental Hospital Sharjah. So all of our training takes place over there. Aapki jo internship hoti hai, you're going to be doing the internship over there as well, and you're paying for that internship as well. The good thing with medicine is you have the residency programs and everything that you can sort of go into after. If you don't want to be a GP, you can go into the residency programs. But unfortunately for dentistry, we don't have that. So when you do finish your degree, you don't have that choice as such to do residency at least in the UAE. Okay, you're working and you're getting paid for that. So you don't have that internship, you're paying, and that's a total of 7 years. And that's when you end your journey as a dental student. As I mentioned, so the importance of internship is that I believe Dr. also mentioned this. You can't sit for your licensing exams in the UAE unless and until you've done this year of internship. So, and I guess because it's compulsory there, they ask for payment. So you could finish your degree from University of Sharjah and then apply for internship in, say, Ajman University or MBRU or any other university that is affiliated with a dental hospital. So it's not necessary that you internship, studies at the University of Sharjah se kiya to internship bhi wahan se karenge. But it is important that you get a year of internship done. A lot of people who want to apply after they're done with their dentistry degrees, yahan se in the UAE, if you want to go abroad as well, you could think that you can skip the internship here, but sometimes the institutions will send you back saying that you need to sort of bring a proof of 1 year of work experience with the institution that you graduated from or with some educational institution jiske saath aapne internship ki hai. So aap jo hai 1 saal ka jo internship hai, it doesn't count agar aap kisi clinic mein help kar rahe hain ya something like that. No, it has to be the hospital that you're working at has to be affiliated with a university, not necessarily your university, but a university. तो मेरे प्लान में initially ये था कि I would finish my degree and internship नहीं करूँगी, मैं बाहर से जाके I'll do a master's. लेकिन sometimes they do, most of the times they do ask you, they're like आपका internship का certificate होना चाहिए. So people do skip out on the internship, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, okay, we can move on to the next slide. Oh, okay, hold on. So I think I might have to move in and out then with Aswa. Okay, all right. I think with that should cover generally how medicine in the dental medicine in the UAE goes, and I'll hand over to Aswa for the Pakistan part.
Yeah, actually, it was Aisha who was going to cover dental in
Oh, sorry, not Aswa, Aisha. Yes, my bad.
Sorry.
All right, okay.
At all, but Aisha couldn't join us today.
Achha.
So just briefly going to cover the content in her slides. You know, what's required for admissions, I guess it's pretty standard across your high school certification, 65% in the NMD CAT, interviews for private universities. What it involves is 4 years with 1 year house job, which is basically internship. And then minimum scores are provided and there are scholarships available. There's something PMC, Fatma, can you cover that? I think you had a conversation with
I can go over this slide quickly. So basically there are, as she's mentioned, the requirements for admission very briefly. And they're very straightforward. Okay, she's also mentioned that it is 4 years with 1 year's house job, which is the internship. She has also divided the aggregate total marks. So basically 40% of your basically admission basis on your A levels or FSC, and then 10% basis on is based on like your metric O levels. And then, as you can see, 50% on your NMD CAT, which is the National Medical and Dental College Admission Test for Pakistan. So private universities, as she's mentioned, do have scholarship options, but they're basically their university websites are very well explained. Like there's a lot of information on their websites, so you can visit those university websites for the different scholarship options. And there are also scholarships available from Pakistan Medical Commission, which she has linked here. So you guys, when you get the PowerPoint, you can go to this link, and these are the options available from the Pakistan Medical Commission for scholarships to public universities for dentistry in Pakistan. Perfect. Go ahead, Zaha.
Okay, so this is just a short scholarship session for the ones that for the universities in the UAE. UOS offers 25% merit-based pay, and there's also the student support fund, but the details of that can be checked out on the website as well. Thing is, as I think the price ranges are very similar to the ones in medicine as well. So they start from 85 to they go up to 110. But yeah, there are 25% to 50% that there are scholarships, but most of them are merit-based, yeah. Again, they're super competitive and you need to keep up your GPA above 85% to get the 25% buddy. Ajman University offers 20 to 50% scholarships for the top high school students. This is on entrance to the university. I've added a couple of the links to these websites on our resources page, so you can look at those for details for the scholarships. Okay, dental medicine across the world. I believe Arslan had a very nice detailed session on engineering in Germany. And so it's Germany, Sweden, Finland, so Scandinavian countries, they do offer degrees. But the main thing is that you need to know the language for the respective country. One of the top dental schools is in Stockholm in Sweden. So, but the thing is for that, again, you need to have planned your way up to that. So that's the thing with me. The reason I was doing it in the UAE was because my parents did not want me to be going abroad. So in the last moment when I found out there wasn't much I could do to sort of prepare myself for studying dentistry or studying anything abroad or, like outside. So yeah, it just takes a bit more planning, but if managed, I think it can be a great sort of student life combined with excellent studies as well. So anybody who's interested and has that sort of time frame to be managing that, it's an excellent opportunity that you guys should definitely go for. Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Soha. That was
okay.
incredible.
Just a second. So I just want to shed some light on what happens after you do graduate. In the UAE, the market is very, very competitive. So you need to not only, you would think that, okay, if you're a good student, you get into the university, that's good, but that's not the end of it, because you need to make sure that you have excellent contacts, that you're on your feet all the time, making sure that, because after you're going to graduate, if you're trying to work as a GP, then it is super competitive. There are a lot of dental schools and definitely not enough jobs. I was discussing with a friend of mine who's graduated from Pakistan, and it's very similar here as well. Even for post-grad, you're getting into what they call wasta, because there are too many students, not enough spots. Similarly for jobs as well, it's quite competitive. So try to get some sort of market knowledge before you're going into dentistry or medicine or stuff like that. Because especially dentistry, with the further education, it's a bit tough. If you're trying to move countries, you will require 2 to 3 years minimum, because either you're learning the language to get there, wherever you're going, you will require licensing. I think multiple careers that we discussed today, they all said licensing. So wherever you're moving, you're going to have that licensing issue. So yeah, just do check in the long run if this is actually what you want. Again, for medicine students, do make sure that this is what you want, because it's a long ride. It's worth it, definitely worth it, but it's a long ride. It's a long ride. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for that. Actually, I have so many questions. My connection is unstable, but can you guys hear me? Okay, great. So there were some questions in the chat that Shaista tried to address as well, but I think, Zoha, you should also take a stab at them. Does the course material in dentistry differ from medical school?
It does, yes, it does. You will have the basics that you do study in year 1 and year 2. So there is microbiology. You're studying you do study general human anatomy as well, but it's very limited. So you will have majority of your courses based on dental medicine, but you do have general medicine as well. Yes, but it is different. It's very different from medical school. Yes.
Can internships be done, the internship you're talking about, can that be done simultaneously while you're in dental school?
No. So when you're doing your internship, you have to submit your sort of graduation certificate. So internship comes after you've graduated.
Okay, it has to be done that sequentially. Thank you so much, Zoha. And with that, Adil, who's been waiting 2 hours now to speak, and to all our students who are online, thanks a lot for staying with us. Please stay with us for a bit longer. Adil, over to you. So you were covering Canada in the previous session on Wednesday, but there were some technical difficulties. So there was some stuff that you missed out on, so you could just catch us up on that.
Okay, so I'm actually unsure where I left off, so I'll just quickly run through everything, and then you guys can let me know if I miss out on anything. So firstly, a small introduction. I got into, so basically, Canada was my most successful country. I applied to UK, US, and Canada, and I got into all the universities that I applied to in Canada. And my main point here is not to show off, but to tell you guys how I did it, so you guys can, replicate it and actually get into the universities I got into. And then I will tell you about some of the mistakes I made, so that you guys can actually avoid those, because you learn 2 ways. One is by learning what to do, and the other is by learning what not to do. Okay, so I'm actually quite a good example of both. So the first is what university did I get into? I got into the University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, University of Waterloo, Western, and York. And there were some more, but I think these were the 5 main ones that I applied to. And the main thing that these universities look at is the universities in Canada are not exactly the same as the universities in the US. So in the US, what happens is that there's a very, very heavy focus on your non-academic successes, like your extracurriculars. If you were team captain, if you were, playing guitar, or if you were, exceptionally good at anything, then that counts very, very highly towards your, overall profile. But with Canada, they do have a stronger focus on your academics. Okay, this is something that I've learned throughout all my applications. They do, place a heavier weightage on your grades. But there is one more thing that they give a lot of weightage to, and that is your community service. So if you are not already doing something for the community, please go out and do it, okay? Because these universities will encourage you to do it while you're at university. And before you're in university, you should, be looking for ways to differentiate yourself. And one of the best ways to do it is community service. And there are actually two advantages of community service. Community service. First is that it shows character. So if you are doing something out of free will, you're giving up your time to help those in need, and it shows the kind of person you are. And that is something that will, that is obviously great, and it will also help your, application process. And then the second is that it will look very good on your profile. So if you are, organizing food camps and health camps, and you're, having these food drives and making sure that people around you are, not struggling financially, then you are actually a very, 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 very likely to get into these universities as long as you meet the academic requirements. And actually, I'll give you some ideas for what you guys can do. One or two things that you guys can start off with. So what I did was that through my school, I was the vice chairperson of the Helper Society. And what we did was we collected roughly 20,000 dirhams in one academic year by organizing various events, various, activities and tournaments. And we used that money to give basic supplies like food, clothing, water, all that stuff to labor camps around Sharjah. So if you're in the UAE, this is something you can do with the help of your school. And this is actually a great, great initiative, not just for your university application, but also for your personal development, because you get to interact with a lot of people that are from a very, very different background to yours, and that are very, very, and it's a great experience. I would definitely recommend that you guys do it. And then the next is that it actually sets sort of stage for the people that are going to be coming, after you. So once you've graduated and gone into university, there will be other people that are younger than you that will be going to university through the channel that you built. So it's actually quite a good thing for you as well in that aspect as well. And one thing that I do realize is that a lot of students in your age group are concerned with stats. So what SAT score do I have? What are my A-level grades? What are my AIS level grades? So that is something, obviously, if you want to know, I can tell you that. But the reason I'm not sharing it right now is because it is not the main thing. Okay, you have to put this in your mind that just because I got a certain SAT score does not mean that is the end-all be-all. Just because I have actually helped quite a few students with their university applications, and so I have had this happen quite a few times where someone will just Google Harvard's average SAT score and say that, hey, look, I have Harvard's average SAT score, can I get in? And I have to give them the bad news that you will probably not get in, because if that's all you have, then universities like Harvard, University of Toronto, University of British Columbia, and all these Ivy Leagues will not accept you because they are looking for a well-rounded student. And that is why I'm telling you guys to focus on your community service. I'm telling you guys to get more involved with the community around you. Because if you just have a good SAT score and you have just good numbers, then you are not well suited for these universities, because they have a very strong focus on your personal development and your extracurricular activities. If you lack in those places, chances are you will not be able to make it to the top universities. Of course, there are lower ranked universities that you can consider. That's obviously up to personal choice. But if you're looking for those, all needs met universities like Harvard, MIT, Yale, Princeton, and Amherst, I think these are the five that are need blind and all needs met. So if you're looking towards those, they do not care about your SAT score. Oh my God, please do not worry about your SAT score. As long as it's above a certain threshold, it is fine. You need to work on your other stuff, because I think it was Harvard and Stanford that came up with some sort of paper that said that if you are the best in the world at something, then you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting it. So that is the level of competition that we're talking about. And this is their own admissions office like coming out and saying that, hey, please, don't just focus on academics. Make sure you're well-rounded and make sure that you are well-developed as a person as well. Okay. Then how should you approach the application process and the scholarship? So unfortunately, if you are a male Pakistani student, you have a very, very small number of scholarships available at the University of Toronto. That is just a harsh reality. So the reason for that is that you have to go through, and these are the official University of Toronto scholarships. You can apply for external scholarships, but they are very, very competitive. So I think in my year, what happened was that 36 scholarships were given out of a couple thousand applicants. So that is the level of competition we're talking about at the University of Toronto. So I got in, and I did not get a scholarship. That's why I was forced not to go to the University of Toronto. So that is something that you will have to bear in mind if you are male and you're from Pakistan. The number of scholarships that you have available to you are very, very few. So make sure that you're putting your heart and soul into those applications. If you're a woman, okay, maybe there are some additional ones, but then again, you know how our government is. They don't like spending money, especially not on education, and especially not on foreign education. So you have to be careful with that stuff. I think, is that a question in the chat? Okay, never mind. I think it's something else. But yeah, so that's something you have to be careful about. Make sure that you're going through through the website and making sure that you have maximum research when you're applying for scholarship, because they are going to be an integral part of your decision on whether or not you should be going to university. Because the cost for attending the University of Toronto is something like 200,000 dirhams a year without scholarships. So it is not cheap, okay? And then I checked it for University of British Columbia. I think there's one in two campuses, one in Vancouver, one in Okanagan, I believe. So Okanagan actually costs 150,000 a year, but then it's also in the middle of the German. So you have to look at these sort of costs as well. They are available on the website. I think they're called university living costs or total cost calculators. I think University of Toronto has it on their website, and so does UBC. I've talked about university. What are universities looking for? I've talked about scholarships. If you still want to know my stats, sure, ask. You can probably message me and I'll tell you. How many months before I joined do I have to apply for? Okay, so good question. So one thing that differs from university to university are these deadlines. So what you want to do is, if you're in grade 12 or you have another year for your education, I'd recommend starting right about now. Just going to the website, going to Reddit, going to YouTube, just looking up getting the gist of things. And once you're done with your examinations, go ham. Okay, because you will be on a time crunch. That is something that is unfortunate. I applied to 18 universities. So whatever you do, make sure that the universities you apply to are universities that you will actually go to if you get in. And don't just apply to random universities. Why not? So make sure that you actually want to get into those universities, and then you will have a couple months. So let's say deadlines are in January, maybe for some of these universities. So the deadline for your scholarships will be roughly about the same time. Some scholarships are very, very competitive, so they will be due way in advance. So just make sure that you have your research done, and you should be fine in that regard. Also, every university has a scholarship for you. Okay, just make sure that you thoroughly look for it, and they will usually have them named as an open to all scholarship. So that means that it will be very, very competitive. So don't be disheartened if you don't get it, but just कोशिश करने में क्या जाता है? What are you losing by just trying? So make sure you give it an attempt. Where do I apply? So you apply through OUAC. So if university is in Toronto and in that area, usually you apply through OUAC. I think you can just Google it, and then you can go through the application from that website. It's very, very straightforward. It's not like your common app where they'll have a bunch of essays. I actually applied to one IB, and I was doing half the application, and there were so many questions that I was like, never mind, I'm not doing it. So I just stopped applying halfway through, because they asked me some question like, how many books have you read? At that point, I had read 0 or 1. So I was like, why even bother? I'm gonna get rejected anyways. Let's just move on with my life. So that's not what happens with your Canadian universities. They are very, very straightforward. There's not a lot of essays, not a lot of tough questions. It's just basic information, and then you'll have like 1 or 2 essays. Then you can complete the application. If you want to apply to universities outside that, so you have Western University, Waterloo, University of British Columbia. These have their own separate application portals. And I think the last question that I'll take is, what were your safe schools? I had a bunch of safe schools. It was Western University was one of them. Then I had York University. University of British Columbia is not that hard to get into. It was like the middle. And then University of Toronto was like sort of higher up. So that was my sort of list. And I think that is it. If you have any further questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, Adil. That was actually super helpful and added wonderfully to what Omar shared in the last session. So guys, thank you so much for staying with us. The presentation part of our session is now done, and we're actually going to dive into a discussion. We would love for everybody to stay on still for another 45 minutes max, to have this conversation. And we've got a couple of questions, and I invite all our speakers to just raise their hand if they want to answer a particular question. So with that, let's dive into, and for students, we have shared the attendance forms. If you do need to leave, we'll be sad, but you can then drop your attendance, your question, fill out this form. And if you have any questions that you want us to address in this panel discussion as they come up, please do put them in the chat box or raise your hand as well. Okay, so with that, let's dive into the discussion. So the focus of our conversation now is because we've kind of focused on information more in our presentations, we want to get into some specific aspects of the process more. So the first question is, applying to universities can be really stressful. How to manage your mental health, and how do you suggest we should manage our mental health and anxiety at this difficult time? Any suggestions for that? And I recommend to our speakers to just keep your answers to 30 seconds. Shaista, you trying to say something? Okay, go for it.
I was trying to look for the hands button. Never mind. Okay, so yeah, it can be really stressful. That period is just so confusing. You don't know, you want to stay here, you want to go out, what are your options? It can get really overwhelming. But I think to have a side hobby, a hobby to just kind of distract you for just a little bit of the entire process really helps. Another thing, in just having belief in yourself, and Allah Ta'ala at the end is that you can only do so much as try your level best, and then just let him handle the rest of it. So I think just having that belief in yourself and the greater power up there really helped me get through that time.
Thanks, Shasta. That was actually really important. For me, it was a very stressful process. I was feeling this is a do or die situation for me if I don't get into university, if I don't. And in some ways, it can. We all feel like that, no matter what our situation is, whether we're super privileged or we're not, whether we have a lot of options or we don't, whether our grades are good or they're bad. We find this to be stressful regardless. I think definitely for me was starting early. I actually started kind of late and had to take gap years, but I gave myself the time to really figure out the process and do my best on it. But another thing that I'm realizing, especially as I hear my peers, their stories, is that it's really not the end of the world if it doesn't work out as you planned, or if you don't get into the dream university, or if you struggle with your education and it's a bit tough. It's not the end of the world. There's going to be a lot that comes after. And actually, we live in a world now where we might have multiple careers in our lifetimes, and we might be going back to university to brush up to learn something completely different, or to get certifications as we move along and improve our profiles. So it's definitely not the end of the world. Like Dr. Shaista said, give it your best, have some faith, and do keep doing things for self-care, for self-preservation, and to have some fun in your life as well. Because school, grades, and then applications on top of it, it's overwhelming. All right, next question. How to manage different expectations. So classic. Ariba's like me. Okay, Ariba, I'm gonna make you a co-host so that you can speak. All right, go for it.
I've been wanting to talk about this since the first session. And I did briefly hit upon it. Guys, your expectations at the top should be your own, but also don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. So society doesn't matter, you guys. It does not matter at all. They're not going to be there when you're in a field that you hate. They're probably going to then be like, oh yeah, you should have just done what you want. And with your family, the only expectations they actually really have majority of the time is that, what you're doing is worth your time and that you're happy with it. For your own expectations, when I was applying to university specifically, I put myself under so much pressure that, I had to be the best in everything. And I had to, I had all these crazy expectations regarding my grades and where I was going to go and like the prestigious university I was supposed to attend. If you're kind to yourself and you manage, I don't like using the word, but it is true, you manage your expectations, everything's going to turn out fine. Oh my God, I'm getting called to make chai, you guys. But Yeah. So, I mean, just manage your expectations. Don't overstress yourself. Don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. Kind of go with the flow, but also, have a plan. But it should not be, out of your reach. Be realistic about it. And yeah, don't worry about society. I hate that the word society is even there, because why do we have to think about them?
Who is
But yeah.
anyway?
Yeah, that's all basically. I've been wanting to say this since someone mentioned in their in the first session. They were like, oh, like I wanted to do journalism. I was like, oh, I wish you could, because it's so sad.
Did anybody here, if they feel like sharing, have difficult conversations with their family or with relatives or teachers or anyone who had a different idea of what they should do in their life? Inviting my speakers. Adil, go for it.
So basically what happened in my family was that my dad is an engineer, and he was actually the first person in the family to get a master's. So everyone in the family was like, Papa, engineer hai to beta engineer hi hoga. Which means that if dad's an engineer, then the son's obviously going to be an engineer. And that was something I despised. I was like, I'm gonna, stay at home and, make food or do whatever. I'd rather run a food stall on the streets than, be an engineer. Not a dig at any of the engineers, but it's just that I despised the combination of physics and math so much that I was like, if I do one more year, I will collapse inside university. So I'm not doing this no matter what happens. That was my thought process. And then I sat my family down. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing engineering. Now tell me what I can do. So then we talked about different options, and then we came to the conclusion that maybe economics is fine. So that could be one of the conversations that you might end up having. You're having a discussion about your future.
Absolutely. Any tips to have a good conversation, or make that easier for yourself and for your parents as well?
I think it's important to understand that your parents are not coming from some sort of evil intentions. They're not there to hurt you. They're not intending on making sure that you fail. They just want to make sure that, as the previous speaker said, that they want to make sure that you are happy with what you're doing, and you're actually not gonna end up homeless in essential. So that's their main goal, that you are happy, you're settled, you're successful. Whatever your idea or definition of success is, be it monetary, be it happiness, whatever it is, they wanted that for you. So what you need to realize is that they are on your team, they're not against you. And then secondly, make sure that you're not acting based on your emotions. Don't just start lashing out and like, aap log samajhte nahi hai, you don't understand me, I'm better than you, I know this, I know that. So don't do that. That is just gonna be downward spiral. Don't do that. That's not gonna help anyone. Make sure that you are, as someone said, have a conversation or an argument. Yes, perfect. That's what you're supposed to do. Have a conversation. They're on your side. Just have a talk, and you will be fine. I don't think there'll be any issues.
I feel like the conversations we have with our family when we're teenagers and figuring out our life is like, it's preparing you to have really difficult conversations when you're actually in the workplace and you're dealing with managers and clients and all kinds of weird situations. So, just think of it as a learning opportunity and do your best. I love the advice that everyone has given. And yes, definitely watch 3 Idiots as well. A student has shared, I'm going to keep all the students when they're sharing their stories in the chat box anonymous, because we don't want, to put you in any kind of difficult situation. But a student is sharing that she wants to do psychology, but her family is telling her that it may not be worth her time to do it in Canada. I invite other speakers to share their thoughts on the story as well. But my own thinking is, because I don't know, I do agree with the perspective that some degrees work better. So for example, my economics degree would have worked a whole lot better if I was trying to join a consulting firm in the US or even consulting firm out here. It's not necessarily best position for me to work at a startup necessarily, right? Some majors are better off studied in some places. I agree with that logic, but for me, I would just be careful in making sure, is the person who's giving me that advice, do they genuinely know about the field, or is it just kahi and kahi hearsay that they're just saying because they want to discourage you, because they personally don't think it's a good path for you. So make sure you get some expert. And that's why I really, really believe when I was applying to universities abroad, I was always on those forums, and there were some surprisingly really good forums where I could get information from past applicants, parents of applicants, admissions counselors, et cetera, et cetera. So do your research and get other advice as well. Any other speaker wants to tackle this? Yeah, Shaista, go for it.
I don't know much about psychology per se, but I do know that it is a very limited field because there's always this thing of, psychologists, they cannot prescribe medications. That's a job of a psychiatrist. So there is that, you could say, backdrop to psychology. So like you mentioned, it's important to take advice from people who are in that field and give you a better insight as to what your pathways are once you choose psychology. Second thing I'd like to point out is that, again, do your own research and know what the future holds for you. But then at the same time, if you're someone who's passionate about psychology and you really see yourself doing that for the rest of your life, I believe you end up carving a niche for yourself wherever you go. So this is where, your true passion really kicks in. So do all your research, get your advice from all the experts that are in the field itself. And then if you feel so strongly towards it, go for it.
Amazing advice. We also covered psychology in the first session and the video is already up. I highly recommend. There was a really nice conversation around it with Safa and Tehreem. So please do revisit that as well. Psychology is now being used. I mean, it's being used in business. It's being used in hospitals. It's being used everywhere. So the applications in the field are just, they're expanding. They're being used to inform AI, for example. There's just a lot there. So explore it, do your research. And if you feel very passionate about it, like I was very passionate about economics, I just could not think of anything else that I wanted to do. So I went with it and I have zero regrets about that. I just wish I could have studied 5 other things with it, which I really tried. But that's it from my side. Okay, next question. Oh, Zahra had her hand up, and Zahra has been on this call for an hour and a half. So she could be on this panel. Thank you so much for taking up the time for this, Zara. And I'm going to give you a stage now if you're still here. Is Zara even here or she left us? Zara's here. Zara, bolo kuch.
I think you need to unmute her.
Oh, she's not co-host. Sorry.
I thought she was like 1 घंटे से बिठाया हुआ है, बात भी नहीं करने दे रहे.
Go for it.
I just wanted to say, especially when we're going into different careers, it's very hard to convince the family on the careers. My grandmother still does not agree with my career choice. She still tells me that I can teach you how to cook. You don't have to go to university for that. So it's still an argument that I have. It's still a discussion that I have with her every time I go back home. So there will be some times when, you have to tackle those questions very strategically. And I've started coaxing into her that, no, I'm learning a lot of new things. And I go back and I show her all the pictures. And at this point, she's proud of me because I'm the first girl in the family who's actually moved out to study. So she does make sure that she is supporting me however she can, but she's still not very, she's probably 60% on board with my career choice now. Probably after I get the degree, she'll be like full 100%. But I think 60% is still good compared to the 0% she was at in 2020. So it's just a matter of time to get your family members on board with your difference in career choices. Yeah.
Yes, and I think with managing expectations, which you learn in very different aspects of your life, one thing you just eventually have to accept is that you should be in the driver's seat when it comes to your life. Otherwise, you end up resenting the decisions other people make for you. So try to be in the driver's seat as much as possible. And you may disappoint people, and you should be okay with that, because the purpose of our existence is not to please other people, even if not to follow their advice to T. So even if people are not on board, just try to work on the relationship and make sure you're doing your best on that relationship, but don't take it upon yourself to just people please all the time, because that's just not possible. All right, next one. How to cope with not getting into the university you wanted to go into. I think there are a couple of different people here with stories. Anybody wants to share their thoughts on this? Anybody had wonderful rejection stories? Is it just me and Adil? Adil, go for it. Arsalan as well. Okay, that's good to know.
Okay, so I applied to 18 universities and I got into 10, meaning I got rejected by 8, which, okay, if you look at it that way, it's not the worst thing, but I got rejected from, I'm going to be very blunt with this so you guys can actually understand that regardless of how, well prepared you may be or how, good your grades may be, you will eventually, not you will, but like you might face a rejection here and there. So I got rejected from Oxford, LSE, Harvard, Cornell, and a few others. And the reason behind those applications being rejected was subject choice. So I had taken business and economics, which is usually considered as the same subject. And that was actually in the email that LSE sent me. So the way you cope with not getting into the university you wanted to go to depends on, two things. Firstly, how do they reject you? So if if you did well and you went past a couple of rounds of interviews and you did, and you were in the final stage, you were rejected, that is a lot easier to cope with. You're just like, fine, okay, you're lost. That means that, you actually stood a very, very good chance of getting in. And you were just, you were not lucky basically, because even if you are applying for these top universities, what happens is that for each person that they select, they reject 2 to 3 other people that are just as qualified. So you sort of consider yourself mentally in that position, even if you might not be, but you do put yourself there. So that is easier to cope with. Over time, you just fine with it. The other rejection is the kind that you get, like I got from Oxford, which is basically immediate. So I sent them the application. Couple weeks later, they were like, "Bye to random." So the reason for that was that I only took 3 A-level subjects, and 2 of those were economics and business. And that was something that was a very brutal rejection, because they actually sent like a full email, we're not considering your application anymore. And like, even if you get in by accident, let us know so we can reject you properly. So Oxford is very brutal with this rejection. So if you get rejections like that, the reason I'm telling you this story is that, it's fine. Okay, it's their loss. It's not your loss. So, and remember that it is always about the way you develop in these 4 years, because it's not like I'm learning a different economics to what someone in Harvard is learning. The books are the same. The content is the same. I'm not learning 1 + 1 = 3. Okay, it's the same content. What the only advantage that the guy in Harvard has is that he might have a slightly better environment. But if I work and I try my best to make the best of the resources I have here at LUMS, I can compete with him. And people from LUMS do compete with people like that. There was a person that was in my society at LUMS who got into Bain. And, she secured a very, very good job. And she was actually the only person selected, or one of the few people selected from Asia. And that is, a very, very big thing. And the reason she did that was because she made the most of the resources. So if you don't get in, it's not the end of the world. Just remember that it's about making the most of the resources you have, rather than crying about the things that you could not get. So, yeah.
That was brilliantly handled. Arsalan, you also seem to have a story.
Yeah, so the university that I'm currently in right now, I got in the second year that I applied for it. The first year that I applied for the university and a couple of other universities, even the completely English Hochschule, which is like an applied sciences universities that literally almost everyone gets into, I didn't get into any university because Germany doesn't accept expected grades at all. And I only had my expected grades at that time. My official certificates weren't out yet. I had applied to other countries. I got into Turkey and Malaysia, but then I had a discussion. How I cope with not getting into was, first I had to figure out myself what I want to do. So I had a discussion with my family, and my dad asked me that, do you want to go to university now, or do you want to try again? Maybe take a gap year if you want to. And I realized a gap would be a good year would be good for me also to realize what I actually want to do in university, because I wasn't 100% sure at the time if computer engineering or informatics was something I wanted to do. And that 1 year where I also learned German was the year that I ventured into web development and picked up a few things and realized that actually, yeah, software is where I want to go. So, and then I ended up applying to the same university, and I got into all the universities that I had got rejected from the previous year. So it just, speak with your family, and if you're passionate about something, and if you know that this is where you want to go. For example, I knew I wanted to go to Germany. Just stick with it. A year or two extra spent into what you actually want to do is going to go a long way.
That's amazing. I love a good acceptance story, but I love a good rejection story even. I have my own, honestly. As Fatma, so you need to step away for a little bit. So how about you stop sharing? Let me share, and I'll keep the conversation going.
But I just need to pray. I'll be back in a bit.
No worries. I can just take over for a little bit when it comes to screen sharing. So, and as I do that, I'll quickly share my own story. I feel like I did not have good enough advice. I just knew that I wanted to do something spectacular. I wanted to do it because I was passionate, but I also felt a bit desperate. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go to university otherwise, if I didn't go to a fully funded one, basically. But then my first year, I only applied to the 5 universities that Adil was talking about that offer need blind admissions. As in, they don't look at your need, they just look at how good an applicant you are. And I got rejected from all of them. And it was very, very dark. It was a very, very dark time for me because I felt like I was just, my mom was very happy. She was like, "Chalo, kal AUS chalte hain, to dakhla karate hain," but I felt like a total failure. So luckily, I had a couple of people in my life who helped me navigate that situation and not tell me try again, but also apply to AUS as a backup. And I went and I applied to AUS, put down a 5,000 dirham deposit, and was like, "I'm going to join you in the spring. I'm going to give early admissions at Williams College one shot." And I did give it a shot, and I did get in, alhamdulillah, before the spring semester started. But the lesson here to learn is, if you really believe in something you really wanted, keep at it. You don't stop. But also, if it's not the end of the world, move on. And that's why I shared a book in the chat. It's called Find Another Dream. It's by a stand-up comic, Maysoon Zahid, who actually has multiple sclerosis, I think. Or no, sorry, she has cerebral palsy. So when she was young, she wanted to learn how to tap dance, and then she tried to audition once, and then the person she was auditioning for told her, "Listen, you can't tap dance with that disease, find another dream." So then she became a stand-up comic. And I think that's a beautiful book to listen to, the audiobook. But I love the lesson there was, if something doesn't work out, don't get hung up on it. Find another dream, right? So if you couldn't go to your dream uni for undergrad, your parents didn't allow you. I know so many friends now whose parents didn't let them go out for undergrad, but they're going out for their masters. They made their own money, they convinced their families, and they're going out. And I think that's just such an amazing story. So as you can tell, your panel discussion is just a chance for me to talk. So I will now move on to the next question and give the floor to other speakers. So you've gotten into multiple universities. You have some good choices, probably some great choices. How did you make your final decision? Does anybody have a selection story to share with us? Again, give me a thumbs up if you want to talk about this. How did you make your, Ali, go for it.
I don't really have a story, but I do have some advice, like especially relevant to the UK. So for example, here, every town, every city is different. I guess if you're in a situation where you're not sure as to what to go for, just once again, look at the university itself. What is it like? What are the people like? What do they offer? What are the services? What's the facilities like? What's the town like? There's a lot to think about outside of, the course itself. And I think that's probably the main point of consideration if you are, stuck and don't know what to choose.
100%. That's excellent advice. Ariba?
I got into Middlesex and I got into CUD, and the final choice I chose to make, and this obviously varies from person to person, was I wanted to then go abroad. So I think a few options that you need to look at are your future options. Again, as I mentioned in my first, look at the professors. If they're experienced in the field that you're learning into, 100% go. Like, don't even think about it, go for that, because the information, out of course information that you get from them is super important. So these are a few things that you need to consider, what your future can look like after this university. And also in the UAE, how valued the degree from the university is. because in the UAE, there are a few universities that you need to get them credited, or are they called accredited? I don't remember. Like I know I got into Heriot-Watt and I didn't want to go through that whole process. I think they have changed it, but do look at these things. These minor details really do matter after you graduate.
Love that advice. Also what you said about, so suppose you're looking at rankings, you'll get a general ranking for the university, but that does not specifically speak to the major you're looking at. It can be helpful for you to compare the overall ranking with this ranking for the specific major. Adil?
So my advice in this case would be to obviously look at the ranking. We all love numbers and we all love putting some sort of stat to these universities, but make sure that you do your research outside that, right? So if you are focused on the stats, look at things like student-teacher ratios. Look at things like the ranking. Now, remember, the rankings here are usually based on your postgraduate and your master's program. So that's where because they're based on your research and stuff like that. So don't worry about them too much for your undergrad. And then, like I think Ariba mentioned, that if you want to go abroad, you do want to make sure that you are going to a university that is accredited and that is actually giving you a valuable degree. And then the last thing that I'll talk about is perhaps the most important is finances. So have a conversation with your parents and then sort of make sure that you narrow down your choices to the university that you truly want to get into and can get into. Because if you have your heart set on a university and then you don't have that conversation with your parents and you end up finding out that you actually can't go to that university, so that's going to be a lot more heartbreaking for you than just rejecting that university yourself. So make sure you have that conversation with your parents where you talk about finances and the possibility of you joining different universities.
1000% on the same page. Dr. Shaista?
Yeah, I just two things that I want to say for medicine per se. When you're selecting the universities, A is know if the university you're opting for has their own training hospital, or if they're not own training hospital, which bodies are they affiliated with? Because that really impacts the training you're going to get in the future. And second thing is get in touch with the students and the alumni of the particular university to see where they are as students and even as alumni. What are the opportunities they got because they went to that particular university? So that really gives you an idea, if you want to go abroad or even if you're here, things like that.
This is amazing advice, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, on to the next question. What if you're not feeling ready for universities? What are some other options? Do we have any stories about that? Ali?
All right, so once again, I'm going to be speaking like in the perspective of if you're in the UK. So you have three main options, I'd say. If you don't want to go to uni right now, you could take a gap year, maybe go travel, live your life, because if I'm being honest, this is probably going to be the only chance you get for a long time to, relax and stuff. So you can do a gap year. The second option, you could do an apprenticeship, which I mentioned earlier. So what it is basically you kind of work but study at the same time. And the reason it's so, how do I say it? It's really competitive. And one reason is because the firm you decide to do an apprenticeship at, they pay for your studies. So let's say I did a law apprenticeship, the law firm would pay for my studies. They would pay me as well. You get paid for apprenticeships. So free studies, you get paid. It's basically like working, but they pay for your studies. Thing is, it's really competitive. I know out of everyone I know, there's only one person that has gotten an apprenticeship, and that's because her dad kind of runs a company. And the third option is you don't even have to go to uni, at least in the UK. A lot of jobs don't require you to have a degree. You only need A levels for a lot of jobs. Like, for example, I technically have a job right now, and I didn't even go looking for it. I'm not saying that's show off. I'm just saying that it's that easy to get a job here without a degree or anything. All you have to do is just maybe half an hour research, and you're going to find a lot of suitable options for if you don't have a degree.
That is such interesting advice, actually. Although to then climb the ladder, you would need a degree, right, Ali? Or nah, you can still rise up.
It depends on the field, because some fields prefer experience over degrees. And I know that, how do I say it? Nowadays, it's getting more towards experience than degrees. Companies are looking at experience more nowadays. So you could definitely do either or.
That's very interesting. Zahra?
I just want to add what I did. I wasn't ready for, or actually, I got rejected from my dream university. So I actually went on to do a double diploma instead while I was waiting to finish my A levels after that. So the diploma situation is pretty straightforward. You have like 6 months, you're doing a small course, it's probably like A levels, but it's in something you are interested in. So it helps just, making your mindset. Plus diplomas are not too expensive in comparison to university studies. So it's easier for someone who's still making up their mind to do diplomas or certificate programs as well in different topics, so then they can make their mind easier to go to university. Also, since it works highly on coursework, so it is easier for you to just maintain or go back to the university field line. So that's another option.
That's a really good idea as well. I think, especially in our part of the world, we just go all about degree, degree, degree. There's some obsession with that piece of paper, but there are diploma programs, there are certifications, there are vocational trainings that can prepare you so that you have for some pretty successful careers that we don't think about. And I think there's a lot of pressure in our society to fit molds. We really feel like everything is a do or die. Like when I was in high school, it felt like a do or die. 10 years down the line, I don't think it was. I agree with the advice that some people shared earlier, that no matter what you do, you can still work your way around and up into something that you think of later. And your idea of what you want from your ideal career life is going to change a lot over time. And the best thing you can do is be kind to yourself and figure out what changes you need to make to explore your options. All right, next question. How do you manage the transition to university, whether you're attending locally or going abroad? Who wants to tackle it first? Zahra? Go for it.
I just realized that I didn't put that hand icon down, but I'll tackle this question first too. Okay, so when you're going abroad, I feel like it is a very big transition. You're gonna miss home a lot. But I think just having the family support backup is so important, vital. Is so vital that you need that support from your family when you are coming out. The first few weeks are always the worst. Whether you're a returning student or a new student, you'll miss your family like anything. But at the end of the day, it's what we want. It's our future, and it's what we're doing for ourselves. And at the if we're benefiting from it, then our family is benefiting from it too. So that is something I would go on for, especially going abroad. Locally, it's pretty easy. Just like, especially now, just try to make sure that you have a empty room to study, because I have had so many fights with my sister for the main reason being that she does not have an empty room to study because she was studying locally. So at the end of the day, because uni is going back on campus in UAE as well, it's just having that support from the family is so important, whether you're studying locally or even abroad. Support to make sure that you have enough time to study, you are getting your specific time to study, like you have made that schedule and everybody knows that schedule. And another thing to add with going abroad is setting a time to add with your family, to talk to your family with time difference. So important to have that daily time with your parents, otherwise it will be very hard to cope up with the new life that you're adjusting to. Yeah.
Great advice. Someone in the chat box just sent me a direct message to ask, what if your family won't support you? But I think you joined in later. We did cover the whole family bit earlier. Yeah, listen, we've all been through that. Everybody in every culture goes through some kind of difference with their families. I would say sometimes if you really feel like it's an unfair, like your family's not understanding what you want, but what you want is logical and is right for you. First of all, I was inviting people to get their parents on the session. You can show them the recordings. It really helps for parents to see other, they see people who did the things that their kid wants to do, and it gives them confidence that maybe the decision, because say in my family, no one had gone abroad. My mom was like, is your university even real? And I honestly didn't know how to prove to her because I had not been there, I didn't know how to prove to her. So like but it's fair. She's not seen it. We did not visit it before I applied. So these are fair concerns. First of all, understanding where our parents are coming from, which is something we discussed earlier as well. And then getting maybe someone else to have a conversation with your family, getting someone in the family on your team is really important. And in some cases, just go with it and deal with the fallout. Okay, Ali, go for it.
All right, I'm just going to focus on going abroad. So going abroad, it might seem like really daunting and stuff, but I'd say one piece of advice, just remember, you can always go back to where you came from. You might be feeling homesick, especially in your first few years, but just keep in mind, you're not there permanently. You can always go back, whether it be in your holidays or, go back to live wherever you came from. But you just remember, you're not there permanently. Secondly, like Zahra said, keep in touch with your family. Your family is going to be, or should be, really supportive and should really help you get through, studying abroad. And especially if you have family in the country you're going to, that helps a lot. Like, for example, when I came to the UK, I basically grew up in the UAE. And when I came here, I was feeling really homesick. I still do. But I think that for the first few months with my family here, I had family here. So first few months with them really helped me get comfortable and settle down. And the third thing is make friends. It might seem really challenging, but chances are that if you go to university and pick out some random guy or some random girl, they might, be in the same situation as you. They might be uncomfortable. They might not have any friends. So if you just try and make friends at university, and who knows, it might end really well. You might end up having a new best friend. But yeah, just socialize and get yourself comfortable. And it's not a permanent stay, you can always go back.
Great response. Great advice, Ariba, and then Dr. Shaista.
So I want to talk a little bit more about locally. My first year at university, I did IFP, so it was a foundation program, and I absolutely hated going to university. I don't know what it was. I felt like I was in some form of culture shock because I went from an all-girls school, being back home at like 3 to being like in a mixed environment with so many different kinds of people. And I think now thinking back to it, it was probably because I just didn't think about how much my life was going to be changing. And it was getting out of my comfort zone and sort of accepting the new experiences that made it really difficult. And as said before, guys, be open to making friends because it really does help you get through a lot of it, because it may not seem like it on the outside, but on the inside, everyone is doing the same. Everyone is struggling at like getting used to the new routine and getting used to the new place. So make friends, but also before going to university, have a conversation with someone who you trust, whose advice you take very seriously, and they will talk you through to the whole transition process. And don't be like me, express your emotions. For the first 6 months, I just suppressed it. And then when it was time for my assignments to come in, I just like sobbed to my mom, and she was like, why didn't you tell me earlier? So just have those conversations. If you're feeling sad, if you're feeling like nostalgic of school, allow yourself to feel that, let it out, and then trust me, you're really going to enjoy university.
Thank you so much for sharing that, actually, Ariba, because I do think we can say, oh, it's going abroad is tougher. I think they can both be equally challenging, because that transition from school to university is just a big jump, whether you're doing it locally or going abroad. Zainab?
Yeah. So for me, university was a different experience because, as I mentioned, I didn't do 2 years of A-levels. So I was still a kid because I had just finished 11th grade. And I had only gotten, for example, 3 months of freedom, which is like, the summer break you get. And then I was in university. So it was a huge jump for me to go from school life to university. So there was no transition, because usually when you're in A-levels, you really get to do other things, even though it's very hard studies, but you have that, you know, sort of social circle and friends and that whole experience in A levels, right? And I totally cut that off from my life. So it was really hard for me to kind of, it wasn't related to studies as such, but just to adjust in university, because I didn't know what I was doing or what I was signing up for, and I just joined it. And then it was kind of like a shock to me, because I was like, okay, I have a lot of freedom, because in university professors don't care if you do assignments. I have a lot of freedom, but then I also don't have a lot of freedom, because I have to submit my assignments and grades based on my timing and my time management and my assignments, all of that. So I think that was really hard for me to kind of navigate in the first 6 months, and especially with the course, which was so practical based that I didn't know what I was getting into, and I just got into it. And then there I realized, okay, this is going to take a lot more effort than I had initially expected it to take. So, and how did I manage it? I did nothing, which is bad advice. I just spent the first year crying, because I was like, I don't have anything to do. And then also I didn't have many friends, which is a very bad thing, as what Ariba said, because a lot of students in my batch were Arabs, and I just couldn't mentally connect with them. It was just a different experience, and I was the only non-Arab in my class. So I was the only like Pakistani girl, and everyone was like Arabs, and I was like, what is this environment, kind of thing. So it was really hard for me, like very, very hard for me in the first year. I really struggled a lot. But then I think it's also about sticking through it. Like, I feel like a lot of people sometimes give up too easily. It's just kind of like, haan, thodi si mushkil aa gayi, and then you're just like, I just can't do it. I'm not built for it. Yeah, you have to build yourself up for those experiences and those problems and hardships, and whatever you go through, it will pass. You know, it will pass. It's not gonna stay permanent. So I felt like in the second, third year, when I started having friends and understanding a bit more what was required from me and how to, you know, manage my time, it just became a normal part of life. But just that transition of like that O-level छोटा सा बच्चा to like university was like a huge step for me. And I don't know if I would recommend that to someone, as I mentioned earlier, but it's also like trusting in yourself, knowing that, you know, you signed up for this and this is what it is now. That's it, going through that kind of phase. But yeah.
Loving the advice that has come in. It's so interesting for me, because I always thought I was the exception in so many things. Unfortunately, you should never fall into that. And now I'm hearing people with very different, you know, experiences, backgrounds, different university journeys, saying the same things, whether they were here or they went somewhere else. Oh, I have a very dramatic first year story as well. I got there, I'm so happy, and then we're about to start the semester and I have a complete breakdown. I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? How am I gonna? I just realized how unprepared I was. And I called my mom and I want to come home. And my mom was like, I thought my mom was just, I thought she would say, I told you so. You know, I thought she would say that, but my mom did not say that. She said, look, you're going to persevere and I'm booking your ticket for December. You're going to come back. And I literally put up a calendar on my wall then and started crossing off the days, because I was just not in that mindset. And that's when I'm realizing that it takes some conditioning to prepare yourself for such a big leap. And that's why programs like these are really, really important, because you then realize, yes, it is possible. I will get through this and I can conquer whatever fear I have right now. All right, on to the next one. How did you find your first year of university? What did you enjoy? What did you find challenging? Well, but everybody has cool stories about this, although I already shared mine. Ariba?
Yeah, so as I've made it very clear, I hated my first year of university, just out of everything, except I loved my course. I absolutely enjoyed it. And I think that is something, you know, like you said just now, like focus mainly on what you're there for, which is your degree. Everything else will fall into place. But if you enjoy, because the first, I remember we had a 6-week period with which I had my high school friend with me. And, you know, when things changed, I was so upset. Like I was like, what am I doing? I'm not part of any clubs. I'm not doing anything. So I started to focus just on my degree and also my class. And it just became so much easier, because I realized that, okay, I am struggling kind of adjusting to the university environment, but I absolutely loved my course. I loved going to class and then having discussions and all that sort of stuff. So that is something that I would recommend, every time, if you want to keep yourself grounded, think about why you're there, think about your degree and think about your passion, and everything else. When you start enjoying that, the major part of university, you start making friends, you start talking to people, everything else falls into place. And yeah, I mean, I will say that it was actually during COVID where everything went online, where I was like, I actually miss being on campus. Like I missed university. It was so weird, but I was like, thank God, finally I can go back and I wouldn't have a breakdown every single day.
Amazing story. Adil?
So contrary to the popular opinion at the moment, I love my first year at university, because I was like, finally have freedom. I can do whatever I want. So basically my first semester was online, so that wasn't really a great time. But my second semester, I was on campus. I actually had a double occupancy room all to myself. I had 2 closets. I was like, "Bas isse zyada aur kya chahiye mujhe?" So these small things, I was actually very, very grateful for. And that's something that you have to understand, that you have to learn to be grateful for what you have. So I had this room to myself. I'm actually in the same room right now as I was in a freshman year, because LUMS does not give you different. They're just like first 2 years you get the same one. So that's one thing that you have. You have to understand that you have to be grateful for what you have. And once you understand that, then your first year transition gets a lot easier. And what I enjoyed was the freedom and the fact that I can sleep whenever I want without anyone knocking on my door asking, so that is so again, that is something that you might misuse in the beginning of your university life, but that's just part of the game. Okay, if you feel like you're not sleeping on time, it's fine. It's fine to do that a couple of times every now and then, but make sure that you're completing your 8 hours. One baad mein aadat ho jati hai na sone ki. And then you become kind of like me, where I'm rarely completing over 9 hours. I'm usually stuck on 8, 8.5 every night, even on weekends. So make sure you don't do that.
Amazing. All right, Dr. Shaista.
I think I'll agree with Adil when he said that he's really enjoying his first year. I enjoyed the first month at least a lot. I easily made friends and we were just like, oh, BFFs for life kind of thing, until the first exam hit all of us in the first month, and I barely passed. It was such a sad state and I could not believe that, this is happening to me. But yeah, that was the biggest challenge. And then getting used to all the exams and, the expectations that comes. Another thing is just the commute from Sharjah to RAC daily. I used to get so tired and I'd go so difficult to study, come back home and study. But eventually I just got used to it. And like everyone keeps mentioning that if you're passionate for it, if you work so hard to get there, everything else just falls in place. I was just like, no, I worked so hard to get into medicine, to do this, to stay with my family. There's no way I'm just giving all of that up. So yeah, that's it. That was the fun bit, the first month, and then it went on.
So relatable. Oh, I remember I was feeling so unprepared. In my, I don't know if this is the college system that I was in or if it's everywhere, but at the first day of class, any class, we were given a syllabus and we had our readings for every class on the syllabus. Now, when I was in school, the idea was we teach you something in class, we lecture you, then you go home and you revise it, right? Like that's what I was trained to do in school. And then I showed up the second time to class and the professor's like, okay, let's talk about the reading. And I'm like, what is he talking? He's going to explain the reading to me. And then I'm going to go home and read it. And it was such a shock to me that once you're given a syllabus, you actually have to prepare for the class before you come to class. That was like, what? And I felt so clueless, and I somehow had to stutter my way through the class. And then just next time I was so prepared. And that reality check, because every system is a different thing. It's really the peculiarities of your system. It takes you a while to transition into that and adjust to that. And also I feel like there's something about when you're in those late teen years, you think you know everything about the world, but you really know nothing. And the more you get exposed to it, initially it's extremely scary. And honestly, it's taken me reaching my mid-20s and above to feel like I have a grip on life at all. So just hold on to your horses. I would say just wear your seatbelts tight. It's going to be a fun, and then enjoy that ride. Enjoy that ride rather than being scared by it. Know that millions and billions of people have done it before you. So it's going to be all right, but lean on to your support systems. I think Zainab wants to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add here, like jumping off from what Bushra has said in terms of like it was very different system, and also like before when we had the discussion about expectations about from teachers and society, I feel like sometimes again we expect too much of ourselves also. So like for example in university when I joined architecture, since I mentioned it's a very practical course and it's a very design based course. So I was expecting myself to get the same good grades as I was getting in high school. And I was like, oh, okay, like it's not going to be that hard. And I am creative or whatever, that kind of a thing. Okay. And then when I went to university and when I actually had to like sit in the classes and design and all of that, I felt like I had set expectations for myself too high in terms of, okay, I have to get A's or I have to get minimum B's in every single design course. And I felt like that's also something that kind of killed that passion off for me at one point in university, where I was just running behind, oh, I have to get good grades and not really like, experiencing what I was supposed to experience. But once I like realized that down the line, which was I think third or fourth year, I was like, grades really do not matter. Those expectations are just set by me to put myself down at the end of the day. It's not really going to matter. And also because in courses like design, which is very practical, even for example, I can talk about medicine, very practical courses, everything is not in your hands. So it's kind of like you do your work, but at the end of the day, half of it is because how the professor is. If the professor wants to give you a good grade, he'll give you the good. Like it's so many variables when it comes to university. So I feel like we as students, as fresh students, we do not factor that thing when we come to come to subjects. We're just always like, oh, it's just dependent on my hard work, and if I don't get a good grade, that's it. I'm a failure in that sense. So I felt like in the first year of university, I really had to navigate how to kind of make my expectations realistic for me. And if there's things that are dependent on other people, like the professors or the environment or whatever, leave that to that, and then just do my hard work for whatever I think is okay or subpar for me, and then deal with everything else later on. So yeah, I think that was a big thing I had to learn in the first year.
Some really mature advice being doled out here that I really wish I knew before going to university. Fatma, you've been awfully quiet, so take it away. Tell us what's on
I
your
just want to add to what Zainab said. She's so right, because I was a person that used to work like I'm an overworker. Like I cannot, like every time I do something, I need to do over and above my personal capacity. And so when I came to university, I'm doing as much as work as I used to do, and I'm still like, what's going on? And then I was like, because I realized that like what I covered throughout my AS, which was one book for accounting, I'm covering in under 2 months. The book weighs more than me, Bushra. So I was very, 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 very put down. And I was like, okay, I need to really, prioritize my mental health and not care about the small tests that come in between and actually focus on my exam. So I actually really would suggest that if you do have any small tests or quizzes that are not going to be counted in any way or sort, don't stress yourself over them. Don't cry nights over them, because I learned it the hard way. So at the end of the day, it will work out. Just go with the flow. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Fatma. And yeah, you're going through it. And also it worked out really well for me that you want to do everything over and above, because you took the lead with this program in so many ways. And it did turn out to be one of our best programs in this PYF terms. Thank you so much for all the effort you put in. And I think I'll hand it over to Ariba and then share a thought. Ariba, you go first.
I just want to give like a general advice overall. In comparison to school, university is not all about grades. This is actually the time where you find yourself as well. And it's not equally important, but it's also super important to experience as many things as you can, take up opportunities that are easy to take up, obviously, but do, try other things as well. In my first year, I only focused on my studies. And I looked around and all my friends and everyone were doing these amazing things like volunteering and stuff. And I was like, why am I not doing that? And I started, putting that more. I mean, I wouldn't have been here talking to you guys if I hadn't done that. So I think that's also something that's really important in university, is to try as many things as you can, especially in your first few years. Just har cheez mein haath dal do. You'll find out so much about yourself, and you're able to, do so many things that you absolutely would not have imagined if you didn't take up those opportunities. So yes, grades are important, padhai bhi karni hai, but all of these other things, finding yourself especially, is super, super important.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. I have a fundamental issue with most education systems where there is this idea that you either excel from the get-go or you never make it. And that is just completely contrary to what a learning process is. The learning process is one in which you fail a couple of times, you make mistakes, you figure out how to do it better, and then you excel towards the end. And that's, I mean, a learning process can go anywhere, but that's typically what it takes. You have to be bad at something and then or not know something in order to then know it. So we do set these unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And if we just focus more on the process, the strategies I learned in college to survive, like how to absorb all the reading, 15 minutes before lunch, during lunch, after lunch. I learned also that to learn something, sometimes you have to look at the same content many, many times. And that's tricky when you have the same class, right? And I was also learning a language, which was extremely fun, but really intense. So yeah, I love how the compassionate advice people are sharing about being kind to yourself, and focusing, not losing yourself in the whole process of learning. Okay, we're past 6 o'clock right now, UAE time. I cannot thank our speakers enough for the dedication that I mean, if honestly you guys did not put in as much, I would have not felt as motivated as I do right now, as energized, as hyped as I do, because you guys have stayed on. Some of you have spent like 10 plus hours on Zoom calls, all 3 sessions with us. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for doing this purely on a volunteer basis as a labor of love to support our students. Hopefully the recordings will go a long way. Hopefully the people who are here have benefited a lot from the discussion that we've just had. And any last words from anyone before we close out the session? Any words of wisdom or advice that may not have had the chance to share but wanted to?
Good luck.
Adil?
Just one thing, that enjoy your time at university. Don't worry too much about grades. And remember that university is not like high school. You can't just study at the end and get your grades. You have to study throughout. So, just make sure that you're handling everything well. And good luck, as Ariba said. You will need it.
The lessons I learned at uni, the friends I made, nothing to match that, honestly, ever.
Can we take a quick picture as well, please?
Yes, I'm gonna stop sharing. Whoever can switch on their cam, please do. Okay, so what reaction? Let's do a thumbs up, a heart. Let's do a heart reaction. All right, guys, 1, 2, 3. I also took a screenshot. Okay, great. Thank you guys so much again for your time. We will be sharing all the Zoom recordings with you guys by email and also the presentations. And you can always, I'm going to try to see which speakers are okay with us sharing their emails. Thanks, Javeria. We're going to see who's comfortable with sharing their emails, so you can contact them directly, or you can even write to us at education@py.org if there's any topic you want us to cover. Someone suggested SAT prep, someone suggested essay prep. We're going to see if we can cover that in future sessions. Okay, and with that, I'm going to let you guys continue on with your Sunday evenings. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, and see you again soon.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
All the speakers, thank you, Fatma. Take care. Hafiz, everyone.